Chapter 1600. The One Who Wants Your Life. With this voice, Luo Qingtong's figure suddenly appeared in the sky. That pair of blood-red eyes, filled with a cold and murderous aura, stared coldly in his direction just like that. Tong Tong? Empress Dowager Yan Shi and Old Master Luo's voices sounded almost at the same time. The latter's face was pleasantly surprised, and his breath was weak. Old Master Luo had shattered the bones in his legs, but he didn't have time to shatter the rest. He looked at Luo Qingtong, who appeared in the air, and the light in his eyes was both gratified and happy. His granddaughter had returned. Great Chu was fine, and Yan Shi would also be fine. As soon as Empress Dowager Yan Shi regained her freedom, she immediately rushed to Old Master Luo's side. Looking at the man's legs that had almost turned into meat paste, she choked with sobs. At this moment, she heard Luo Qingtong's voice. She immediately raised her head in disbelief, and her face was filled with shock and surprise. The person who came was Tong Tong. It was actually Tong Tong, her granddaughter. Thinking of the sword that had just cut through the great young marshal's attack that restrained her breath, Empress Dowager Yan Shi was both surprised and happy. She almost couldn't believe her eyes. Grandmother, take grandfather to rest first. Luo Qingtong's eyes were cold. Her blood-red eyes swept over Old Master Luo, and she instantly discovered the tragic shattering of his legs. Immediately, the cold light in her eyes became even more piercingly cold. Okay. Empress Dowager Yan Shi quickly calmed down. She looked at Luo Qingtong, who was confronting the great young marshal, and didn't say anything. She directly and decisively retreated from the city wall with Old Master Luo. Not for anything else, but for them to leave at this time and not become Luo Qingtong's worry and burden was the best help to her. Humph. You are Luo Qingtong? The great young marshal coldly sized up Luo Qingtong. Although the other party's attire and aura inexplicably gave him a strange and palpitating feeling, he did not take it to heart. Even Luo Qingtong's attack, which had cut through his aura, was nothing in his eyes. It's just that I don't know what kind of unorthodox attack it is. Furthermore, he was caught off guard. However, the first time was easy, but the second time was the same as courting death. The other party's talent and strength were indeed not bad, but in front of him, he could easily capture him with just a few moves. The great young marshal looked at Luo Qingtong's undulating sage aura, disdainfully thinking. Good, good, good. He sneered and said, you can wear out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it by chance without any effort. Luo Qingtong, Her Imperial Majesty the Empress wants you to pay with your life for our great young imperial family. Since you have come, then obediently return with me. Do you want to leave by yourself, or do you want me to cripple you and then take you away? He coldly looked at Luo Qingtong, his gaze indescribably aloof. It was as if his words were already a rare charity to Luo Qingtong. Heh. Seeing the arrogance on his face, Luo Qingtong suddenly chuckled. Her eyes slightly narrowed, the blood within them rippling like the blood-colored nectar of the boundless hell. It was extremely beautiful, but also extremely dangerous and terrifying. Two conditions, what preferential treatment? Luo Qingtong's expression was indifferent. It's a pity that I won't choose either of them. Chapter 1601. At this point, Luo Qingtong's eyes burst with blood. In an instant, it was as if the Queen of Purgatory had come to the world. Boom! Luo Qingtong's figure swept up in an instant, and the heart of the 1,000-year-old soul-guiding wood appeared in her hand. At the same time, the life and death sword in her hand erupted with a blazing white light. It was a light that could annihilate everything in the world. Heaven-conquering art. Annihilation. Following Luo Qingtong's shout, the great young marshal's expression changed abruptly. The sword light emitted by Luo Qingtong was too powerful. It was so powerful that his heart was frantically warning him to be careful of danger. What was going on? How could a mere Sage Realm expert launch such a terrifying attack? His expression changed in shock, and he retreated rapidly. However, it was too late. Just now, when he did not take Luo Qingtong seriously, his fate was sealed. Boom! Luo Qingtong's attack landed heavily on his body. The light of annihilation continued to erode his external defenses and strengthen the annihilation attack. Then, with a loud boom, he was sent flying. Ah! The great young marshal screamed miserably, and then fell heavily to the ground. He lay on the ground, twitching constantly. Until the moment he was sent flying, he still could not figure out how Luo Qingtong did it. Launching such an attack as a Sage Realm expert, she sent him flying with one move. He did not have any power to fight back. Thud! Thud! Luo Qingtong walked to the front of the great young marshal with light steps. She raised her hand and stabbed her life and death sword in front of the great young marshal. Hum! The black and white sword vibrated softly. Luo Qingtong's gaze was ice cold. She slowly watched great Yong's marshal below, who was convulsing and trying to get up. She lifted her foot and stomped heavily on his body, which had just risen halfway, back down. With a crack, the sage's bones, which should have been extremely tough, were instantly broken into two under Luo Qingtong's foot. Luo Qingtong's bloody eyes could find the most precise point of attack. While making the opponent suffer so much pain that he wished he was dead, he would not die easily. "Which hand did you use to choke my grandmother just now?" she said with cold eyes. The great young marshal was about to faint from the pain. He stared at Luo Qingtong like a ghost. "Good." Luo Qingtong looked at him indifferently. "You don't want to tell me?" The bloody light in her eyes. "Then I'll take it that you pinched both hands." As she spoke, she directly stomped her foot. A huge and Luo Qingtong's body. In an instant, from the bones to the flesh. The great young marshal's left hand was instantly stirred up by the power, like a lump of mud. Ah! He could not help trembling and screaming. Luo Qingtong's strength in breaking his bones and flesh was very skillful. Every inch of the broken bones made the great young marshal so painful that he wished he could die. "You broke my grandfather's legs and broke his bones? Did you enjoy watching it just now?" The smile on Luo Qingtong's lips was cold and evil. The bloody light in her eyes flickered without a trace of warmth. This was the real side of the girl who was called the supreme ocular sorcerer in the 24th century. Powerful, cold, evil, and bloodthirsty. Chapter 1602. In the past, Luo Qingtong had an old beggar who picked her up. Now, Luo Qingtong had grandfather Luo who would protect her at all costs. She was willing to seal the beast in her heart for them and try her best to live peacefully in this world. However, if anyone touched her reverse scale, then even if she had to destroy the world, she would make them pay the price. Luo Qingtong hadn't lost control like this for a long time. When she saw grandfather Luo's legs shatter, the beast in her heart had already begun to unseal. "Don't worry, let's play slowly. Don't worry, I won't let you die so easily. Let me think, if I hadn't arrived in time, what else would you have done to my grandfather? Now, I'll slowly return everything to you." She looked at the struggling great young marshal with a sinister and bloodthirsty gaze. She lifted her foot and crushed the bones, flesh, and blood of his hands bit by bit. During this process, the great young marshal's screams never stopped. To be able to make a saint suffer so much that he couldn't control his screams, it must be very difficult. From this, it could be seen how terrible the pain was. The great young marshal kept crying and begging for mercy, the dignity and pride of a saint vanishing without a trace. However, Luo Qingtong's eyes didn't waver in the slightest. She crushed the great young marshal's bones, flesh, and blood into a ball from his hands to his feet, but kept the surface intact. Then, just when the great young marshal thought that the torture was about to end, she lifted her foot and kicked him off the city wall. Bang! The great young marshal's body fell heavily into the mud below the city wall. Luo Qingtong's voice was cold, the blood in her eyes chilling. "I'll give you a chance to live now." Her gaze swept across the great young soldiers who were crying for their parents under the attack of the beast tide, and she coldly said, "I'll guarantee that whoever cuts off a piece of his flesh won't die." Following Luo Qingtong's words, the Great Yong soldiers who had already given up all hope were instantly stunned. Soon after, as if they had grasped at a life-saving straw, they leapt to their feet and madly charged towards the Great Yong marshal. The demon beast tide brought by Luo Qingtong was too terrifying. It was not something an ordinary beast tide could compare to. Moreover, due to the attraction of the 9-story exquisite pagoda's aura, these demonic beasts went crazy and unleashed more than 200% of their battle strength. Everything that stood in their way would suffer their frenzied attacks. The soldiers of Great Yong were simply unable to withstand the barrage of attacks. They were about to be torn apart by the horde of demonic beasts. At this moment, Luo Qingtong suddenly gave them a ray of hope. Who cared who the other party was? Moreover, this marshal of Great Yong had been crippled by Luo Qingtong and had no ability to retaliate. These Great Yong soldiers all surged towards him. Everyone wanted to cut off a piece of his flesh. Countless people were choosing who to devour. Their appearance was so crazy that it made one shiver in fear. Don't come over, don't come over. Ah! The Great Yong marshal screamed miserably. Finally, his voice was completely lost in the encirclement of the Great Yong soldiers. Luo Qingtong coldly watched this scene, but the evil fire in her heart did not subside. Boom! Chapter 1603. Whoosh! The spirit ship instantly shot off into the distance like a bolt of lightning. Boom! 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 The demonic beasts that were madly attacking the Great Yong soldiers sensed the departure of that extremely attractive aura. They immediately spread their hooves and spread their wings, whistling as they chased after Luo Qingtong. Following their departure, the Great Chu soldiers in the city seemed to have awakened from a dream. They absent-mindedly went out to clean up the mess. Boom! Inside the spirit ship, Luo Qingtong's blood-red eyes flickered. She couldn't restrain the surging hostility. Her gaze was ice-cold as she led the demonic beasts into the territory of the Empire of Qin. Little Pig saw that something was wrong with her and hastily jumped in front of her. Using his 2 little hooves, he shook her with all his might and said, "Hey, master, calm down. Calm down. Control yourself. This is the Great Chu, not the Great Yong. Think of your grandfather. Think of Empress Dowager Yan Shi. If you destroy this place, they will be heartbroken." Little Pig's words had a slight effect. Luo Qingtong's blood-red eyes met his for a moment before she turned her head away. Boom! The spirit arc abruptly changed its direction and flew toward the surrounding mountains and forests. Luo Qingtong led the demonic beasts and traversed through the uninhabited mountain range. Although the demonic beasts along the way were like candlelight being swept away by the wind, uprooting mountains and toppling trees. In the end, they bypassed a large number of towns and countries and didn't cause too much damage to the Great Chu. Little Pig felt a lot more at ease after seeing this. However, when he saw the blood-red color and emotionless coldness in Luo Qingtong's eyes that hadn't faded, his heart suddenly rose to his throat again. Luo Qingtong's appearance, damn it, it can't be that, right? Little Pig seemed to have thought of something, and his heart suddenly skipped a beat. His expression became extremely solemn. At the border of the Empire of Qin. A group of the Empire of Qin border officers and soldiers were defending against the attacks of Great Yong's army. No one had expected that Great Yong's strength would be so formidable. Just like the previous battle with Great Chu, Great Yong had also sent a saint. Just when the Empire of Qin thought that they were about to win, they suddenly attacked and killed all the generals at the border of the Empire of Qin. The soldiers of the Empire of Qin had no time to react. They didn't even have the chance to send out a message before they were completely surrounded in the border city. Massacre the city. The Great Yong official, who had relied on Feng Wuan's forbidden technique to reach the Saint Realm, spoke in a deep voice. He looked at the border city of the Empire of Qin with a cold and stern gaze. Right at this moment, boom boom boom. The demon beast tide led by Luo Qingtong had arrived. Because the distance between the Empire of Qin and Great Yong was relatively far, the war between the two sides started later than the war between Great Chu and Great Yong. After Luo Qingtong dealt with the situation at the border of Great Chu, she led the demon beast tide all the way to the border of the Empire of Qin. It just so happened that the city of the Empire of Qin had been breached and Great Yong's soldiers were about to massacre the city. Looking at the Great Yong soldiers who had begun to kill their way into the city, Luo Qingtong's eyes turned cold. With a whoosh, she rushed out of the spirit ship. People of the Empire of Qin, retreat to the center of the city. As Luo Qingtong's voice sounded, she held the heart of the 1,000-year-old soul guiding wood in her hand and used 2 annihilations to kill the Great Yong official. Then, Luo Qingtong rushed into the city and started a massacre. Chapter 1604. As more and more people were killed, Luo Qingtong's eyes became more and more bloodshot. The murderous intent and hostility in her eyes became more and more intense. Oh no! Little Pig's heart sank when he saw this scene. No, if this goes on, something will happen to this woman. That. I can't reveal it now, Master. Didn't you say you were going to Great Yong's holy capital to seek justice for Grandfather Luo? Are we going there now? Little Pig asked cautiously. At the same time, he quickly used his aura to contact Yi Qianxian, telling him to hurry over and find this woman. The only one who could stop this woman was Yi Qianming. Grandfather, the bloodshot light in Luo Qingtong's eyes flickered for a moment. Then, she remembered that she was indeed going to bring these people's corpses to Great Yong's holy capital. She wanted to avenge her grandfather, she wanted to destroy Great Yong. Boom! Luo Qingtong's figure flew up. She tossed the corpse of the saint-level Great Yong official into the spirit vessel, leading the demonic beasts in a mad dash. After returning to the border of Great Chu, she took the corpse of the Great Yong marshal, who had been skinned to the bone by the crazy Great Yong soldiers. Then, she drove straight to Great Yong's holy capital. Great Yong's holy capital. Everyone looked at the figures floating in the air outside the city in shock. These people were naturally the experts from the Black Field who came to Great Yong's holy capital with Yi Qianxian. Time's up. Are you people from Great Yong unwilling to open the door and surrender? Yi Qianxian floated in the sky above Great Yong's holy capital with his hands behind his back. That pair of blood-red sword-like eyes stared coldly at the group of people standing on the city walls of Great Yong. Ming Zun, you are too arrogant. Quite a few of Great Yong's ministers, who had relied on Feng Yuan's forbidden technique to raise their strength to the Saint Realm, looked in Yi Qianren's direction with cold and arrogant expressions. Great Yong's strength was no longer the same as before. With their current strength, unifying the eastern region was only a matter of time. Did Ming Zun still think that it was the same as before when the 4 dynasties could only look at his face and were extremely afraid of him? Several of Great Yong's officials had arrogant expressions on their faces, looking at Yi Qianxian with ridicule in their eyes. Don't think that just because you guys from the Black Field are strong, you can do whatever you want. Wasn't it just some Saint Realm experts that had surpassed the Saint Realm and the Saint Realm? It wasn't as if Great Yong didn't have any. Moreover, everyone below the Saint stage was an ant. These people were nothing in their eyes. The corners of Bei Qing and Feng Yu's lips twitched as they looked at their arrogant and disdainful gazes. They cursed in their hearts. Master was just too lazy to use more strength, but they thought that Blackfield strength was not enough? What kind of joke was that? If Blackfield really revealed all of his strength, they would be scared to death. The two of them were speechless, but Yi Qianxian's gaze was cold. All right. He nodded coldly, then suddenly raised his hand. Boom! Under the shocked gazes of countless people, the huge defensive barrier covering Great Yong's holy capital was easily torn apart like a piece of paper. At the same time, the Saint Realm officials of Great Yong who wore mocking expressions were instantly killed. Kill! Yi Qianxian waved his sleeves. He had given Great Yong a chance. They did not cherish it. Boom! A group of Blackfield experts rushed into Great Yong's holy capital. Chapter 1605. What's going on? Yi Qianxian hurried to Luo Qingtong's location. The latter was leading a horde of demonic beasts in the direction of Great Yang's holy capital. Along the way, all the cities and countries either fled or surrendered in panic. When Luo Qingtong had led the demonic beast horde to the border of Great Chu, news of her had already spread throughout Great Yong. They knew that someone was leading a horde of demonic beasts to wreak havoc in Great Yong. Thus, when they saw her, all the cities and countries in Great Yong either fled or surrendered. Following this commotion, Yi Qianxian quickly found Luo Qingtong's location. He forced Luo Qingtong's spirit boat to stop and directly flew inside. He saw Luo Qingtong inside. The young girl's eyes were so red that they were like a blood-colored nectar. The color of her pupils and the whites of her eyes were almost indistinguishable. What entered his eyes was a shocking red. There wasn't a trace of emotion or warmth in her eyes. When she saw him, there wasn't even a trace of emotion. There was only a monstrous killing intent and hostility. Boom! Luo Qingtong's figure suddenly shot up, heading straight for Yi Qianxian. Yi Qianxian's brows furrowed slightly. He raised his hand to block her attack and restrained her in his embrace. Then, he looked at Little Pig beside him. "Aya, my mother. You're finally here." Little Pig's face was still filled with lingering fear as he hurriedly hopped over. Seeing Yi Qianxian's cold and puzzled expression, Little Pig hurriedly said, "Grandfather Luo's legs were crippled by someone." The bones in his legs were shattered. When Little Pig said this, Yi Qianxian understood what was going on. So it was because something had happened to Grandfather Luo. No wonder this woman lost control. Yi Qianxian frowned as he looked at the woman who was struggling in his embrace. There wasn't the slightest trace of him in those blood-red eyes. There was only endless killing intent and the stench of blood. At this moment, Luo Qingtong looked like a ruthless killing queen who had descended from the depths of purgatory to the mortal world. She didn't care about anything in this world. There wasn't anything or anyone that could enter her heart. Seeing this emotionless Luo Qingtong, the light in Yi Qianxian's eyes immediately turned cold. He wouldn't allow this woman to ignore him, even when she was unconscious. "Luo." He called out Luo Qingtong's name and pressed her against the inner wall of the spirit boat. He lowered his head and kissed set on her on the lips on's lips. The man's kiss was tyrannical and predatory. From top to bottom, from the inside and on the outside. And on Luo Qingtong, on Luo Qingtong's. The bloody light in Luo Qingtong's eyes flickered violently. The man's aura was very familiar, so familiar that her entire soul trembled, as if it was about to rush out of her body. Buzz! The bloody light in her eyes exploded. In the next second, she grabbed the man's shirt and kissed him back with a domineering aura that was not inferior to his. "Who are you?" After the kiss, both of them were breathing heavily. At this moment, Yi Qianxian heard Luo Qingtong ask. He raised his head abruptly and saw Luo Qingtong staring at him with a pair of enchanting, blood-red eyes. The killing intent and hostility in his eyes were still there, but there was a trace of doubt in his eyes. Chapter 1606. Yi Qianxian narrowed his eyes. "I'm your man." He looked at the young girl in front of him. There was obviously something wrong with the latter. When Luo Qingtong opened her mouth, Yi Qianxian thought she had regained her senses. However, it was obvious that this wasn't the case. However, Yi Qianxian was certain that Luo Qingtong hadn't been possessed. After all, the kiss just now was indeed her aura and feelings. In all these years, Luo Qingtong was the only one who had truly gotten close to Yi Qianxian. It wasn't to the extent that he couldn't sense it. Moreover, with his strength, no one could silently possess Luo Qingtong's body in front of him. Therefore, there was no such thing as possession. Then, he would just wait and see. After he spoke, Luo Qingtong stared at him with her blood-red eyes for a while. Then, she laughed. "Man? You're this lord's boy toy." She chuckled as she looked at Yi Qianxian. That smile was unbridled and bloodthirsty, but it also carried an incomparably domineering charm. "This lord quite likes you." As she spoke, she leaned closer to Yi Qianxian and breathed into his ear. "Come here." As she spoke, she walked to a table in front of them and hooked her finger at Yi Qianxian. Oh my God. Little Pig couldn't bear to watch anymore. Boy toy. When he saw Yi Qianxian's face turn dark, he instantly felt that he should run away as soon as possible. Otherwise, if he stayed any longer, he would be silenced at any moment. With that thought, he immediately covered his eyes and inched to the side along the wall of the spirit ship. He inched to the side of the cabin door. Then, with a whoosh, he spread his 4 little hooves and ran out as fast as he could. That speed was even faster than a mouse being chased by a cat. On the other side, Yi Qianxian's face darkened when he heard Luo Qingtong say, "Boy toy." When he saw the girl beckoning him with her finger, his face turned even darker. He's a man, not a boy toy. He gritted his teeth and looked at Luo Qingtong. This woman really wanted to anger him to death. Couldn't she be a little more obedient even when she was unconscious? This lord doesn't have a man, only a male pet. Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows casually and looked at him. The blood-red ripples in her eyes were beautiful and enchanting, but also domineering beyond compare. That was a kind of domineering aura that seemed to hold the hegemony of the world in his hands. It was a kind of domineering aura of supremacy that made the world tremble. It was completely different from Luo Qingtong's usual appearance. Yi Qianxian narrowed his eyes at her and walked up to her. "Come here." Luo Qingtong looked at him and raised her eyebrows. She raised her hand and patted her thigh. In an instant, the veins on Yi Qianxian's forehead throbbed. He looked at Luo Qingtong with a dark expression. He didn't know what this woman wanted to do. Why is she so troublesome even when she's unconscious? However, when he looked over, Luo Qingtong misunderstood. Shy. Luo Qingtong watched as he walked in front of her. He raised his eyebrows and stopped moving after a glance. She raised her hand and pulled him over. Yi Qianxian was afraid of hurting her, so he couldn't resist. He was pulled over and sat on her thigh. The veins on his forehead throbbed. This woman. Fortunately, there was no one else here. The only one left was Little Pig, who ran away to save his life. Otherwise, Yi Qianxian didn't know what kind of expression he should use to meet people in the future. Chapter 1607. What the hell are you doing? The veins on Yi Qianxian's forehead throbbed as he gritted his teeth and growled. Naturally, I'm going to dote on you. Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows slightly. Her blood-red eyes were bloodthirsty, domineering and enchanting. She lowered her head and drank a mouthful of wine. Then, she suddenly pulled down the man's neck and passed the wine in her mouth into Yi Qianxian's mouth. The latter was gritting his teeth and was caught off guard by Luo Qingtong's kiss. The strong wine entered his mouth and burned his throat, but it was not as hot as the moment when the girl kissed him. Yi Qianxian's eyes became deep and serene. He looked at the gorgeous girl who was holding him in her arms and clasped her shoulders. He was about to deepen the kiss when Luo Qingtong unexpectedly retreated at this time. She raised her hand to wipe the wine on her lips and smiled lightly. She looked at Yi Qianxian with an incomparably wicked and enchanting gaze and said, "How is it? Does this lord dote on you?" As she spoke, she raised her hand and drank another mouthful of wine. However, this time, she did not pass it to Yi Qianren. Instead, she let out a long laugh and gulped it down herself. The girl's posture was wild and unrestrained. The way she smiled was like the most beautiful rainbow and sunset in the sky. It was also like the most enchanting scenery in the world. Domineering, unrestrained, enchanting, charming. All the scenery in the world belonged to her. Yi Qianxian looked deeply at Luo Qingtong. At this time, Luo Qingtong attracted his attention more than usual. This woman was probably a poison. He was destined to fall for her for the rest of his life, and he would not rest until he died. Feed me. After drinking that mouthful of wine, Luo Qingtong filled the wine cup in her hand again. Then, she handed it to Yi Qianxian and ordered domineeringly. The man took the glass and drank it in one gulp without saying anything. Then, he lowered his head and passed the wine in his mouth to Luo Qingtong. The way he held her was domineering and decisive. In this lifetime, he would never give this woman any chance to leave him. She was his. She was destined to be his. Haha. Luo Qingtong chuckled. She catered to Yi Qianxian's plundering. Then, with a bang, the two of them fell from their chairs. Luo Qingtong was on top of Yi Qianxian, and the two of them were lying on the ground together. Looking at the man beneath her, Luo Qingtong bent down with a smile and bit Yi Qianxian's Adam's apple. Yi Qianxian let out a muffled groan. That was the most vulnerable and fatal part of a person. With Luo Qingtong's bite, Yi Qianren used almost all of his strength to suppress the instinctive reaction in his body that wanted to fight back immediately. Luo Qingtong bit his throat and carefully ground it. At the same time, she chuckled and said, "Is this how you usually serve this lord?" The bloody light in her eyes was domineering and enchanting. Her posture was like that of an insufferably arrogant queen. Yi Qianxian finally couldn't hold back. This seductress. He abruptly turned over and stood up. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed slightly. In an instant, the bloody color in her eyes faded. At the same time, Luo Qingtong's body softly fell on Yi Qianxian's body. Luo Qi. Yi Qianxian almost immediately hugged Luo Qingtong. His breath circled around her body. After confirming that she had just fainted from overexertion, he fiercely gritted his teeth. "You woman." Yi Qianxian hugged her. He didn't know whether to be angry or not. His entire body was boiling hot as if it was on fire. Chapter 1608. Yi Qianxian looked at Luo Qingtong and clenched his teeth. Finally, he carried her up and placed her on the bed that Luo Qingtong usually rested on. The space within the spirit ship was huge, so it was naturally equipped with all the things that one usually needed. Yi Qianxian placed Luo Qingtong on the bed with a cold face. He couldn't hold back the evil fire in his heart. He leaned over and bit the girl's lips a few times. "Just you wait. I'll settle this score with you sooner or later." He left with a cold face. Before he left, he caught Little Pig, who was running away, and ordered it to guard Luo Qingtong. When he forced her spirit ship to stop, the demonic beast horde led by the latter had been forced to retreat by his imposing aura. They should have returned to the western wilderness by now. He notified Bei Qing and the others to drive them away, so as to prevent them from causing trouble in Great Yong. After all, he was going to give this sacred dynasty to Luo Qingtong. Naturally, he couldn't let those demonic beasts destroy it. Hiss. After Yi Qianxian left for a long time, Luo Qingtong slowly woke up. When she woke up, she found that her lips were swollen. She didn't know what had bitten her. Luo Qingtong sat up while hissing softly. She looked up and saw Little Pig, who was guarding by the side. She immediately grabbed it and asked, "What's going on? Why am I here? And what happened to my mouth?" Luo Qingtong's voice was a little hoarse. Before she lost consciousness, she drank a lot with Yi Qianxian. Now, all the after effects were showing. Luo Qingtong's tongue was a little numb. She had kissed Yi Qianxian too much. In short, she felt that something was wrong. Especially her mouth. Luo Qingtong covered her head, feeling dizzy. She could only remember that when she was at the border of Great Chu, she seemed to have been blinded by anger. After that, it seemed to have gone out of control. Luo Qingtong frowned. She had the problem of losing control and losing consciousness when she got too angry. This problem had existed since her previous life. When she loses control, she becomes extremely cold and bloodthirsty. Before she recovers, she will only do one thing, and that is to kill. Moreover, it did not differentiate between friend and foe. This was also the reason why Luo Qingtong was so cold and aloof in her previous life. She had almost become the public enemy of the world's forces and ability users. Once she went berserk, she simply could not control herself. But sometimes, Luo Qingtong was conscious. But those times were very, very few. Almost every time Luo Qingtong woke up, there were corpses everywhere. As time passed, no one dared to provoke her in her previous life. Even if he did, it would be an assassination. Luo Qingtong tried her best to control her temper. She did not expect that old Master Luo's accident would release the beast in her heart. Luo Qingtong's expression was grave. She looked at Little Pig and asked, "Are the people from Great Chu okay?" Luo Qingtong did not care how many people she killed. She only cared about whether old Master Luo and the others were okay. She lost control. Did they also lose control? No. Little Pig hurriedly shook his head. Oh. He hurriedly added, "It's just that old Master Luo's legs are crippled. Other than that, he's fine." But. They're fine, but you're in big trouble. Master. Little Pig looked at Luo Qingtong with a bitter expression. He also did not expect that Luo Qingtong would become like that when Yi Qianxian came. Chapter 1609. What boy toy, what incessant flirting. There were also some things I didn't even see when I ran away. I'll definitely be punished for all of these in the future. Whine. Little Pig looked at Luo Qingtong as if he wanted to cry, but no tears came out. The latter frowned and looked at him. "Why are you crying if there's nothing going on?" "I'm clearly crying because of you." Little Pig had been warned by Yi Qianxian to keep his mouth shut. There was no way he could tell Luo Qingtong the truth. However, Luo Qingtong wasn't someone to be trifled with. She quickly connected the dots between Little Pig's unusual expression and the fact that nothing happened to her when she went berserk. Yi Qianxian is here? Only that man could control her when she went berserk without hurting her. Luo Qingtong looked at Little Pig. Little Pig hummed and nodded in affirmation. Ahem, Luo Qingtong coughed lightly. She raised her hand and touched the bite mark on her lips. She had a bad premonition. She asked, "Did I do something very bad to him?" Luo Qingtong looked at Little Pig. Little Pig's eyes told her, "Very bad. Very bad. The kind that would be punished at any moment." Oh my God. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. Humph. Although this guy wasn't very reliable, he wouldn't lie to her about this kind of thing. Oh no. What did I do to Yi Qianxian when I lost control of my consciousness? Luo Qingtong felt conflicted. In the past, when she lost control of her consciousness, she would kill someone. Now that she transmigrated, she developed a new ability. And it was targeted at that man? Luo Qingtong felt like her balls were about to explode. Forget it, I'll just run away and lie low for a while. I'll wait until that man's anger subsides. With that thought in mind, Luo Qingtong prepared to leave on the spirit ship. At this moment, she suddenly remembered something. She frowned and asked Little Pig, "How long have I lost control of my consciousness?" "Since I lost control?" 3 days. Little Pig looked at Luo Qingtong. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and jumped up. Oh no. The grand meeting of the 4 academies. When Great Yong dispatched troops to the Empire of Qin and Great Chu, the 4-courtyard grand banquet was about to begin. Perhaps it had already begun. Go. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. She raised her hand and patted the control hub of her spirit boat. Then, with a swoosh, the entire spirit ship flew toward the holy capital of the Great Qi dynasty like a bolt of lightning. While Luo Qingtong was rushing to the holy capital of De Qi. In the holy capital of the Great Qi dynasty, the 4 academies tournament had already begun. Feng Wan sneered as he led the members of the Great Yong Sacred Academy to sit below the stage, watching the battle on the stage. The people from the Empire of Qin and Great Chu were quite lucky. They had drawn each other, so Feng Wan could only deal with one of them for the time being. Don't worry. Once the grand meeting of the 4 academies came to an end, they could still kill all the people from Great Chu and Great Qin who came to participate in the grand meeting. Feng Wan wouldn't let them go back alive. Especially Ma Chenyi. Feng Wan looked coldly at the refined youth sitting on the grandstand of the Empire of Qin. The Empire of Qin actually produced a true dragon this time. Moreover, it was a sage realm cultivator. Thinking that the other party's strength should have been his, Feng Wan's heart was filled with resentment. It's a pity that Luo Qingtong didn't come. Otherwise, she would have died without a burial ground. But it doesn't matter. After we destroy the Empire of Qin and Great Chu, she will still die. Chapter 1610. Does Luo Qingtong think that I can't do anything to her just because she hides like a coward? What a joke. The world is so big. As long as I want her to die, she won't escape. Without the protection of the Black Field, how long can she be free and unfettered with the protection of the Empire of Qin and Great Chu? The Empire of Qin and Great Chu don't know how much Great Yong's strength has increased. By the time the 4 Academies tournament is over, Great Chu will probably be destroyed. At that time, with the might of destroying Great Chu and merging the 2 dynasties, even if the Great Qin realized that Great Yong's strength was extraordinary, what could they do? Sooner or later, Great Yong will be hers. Moreover, she doesn't plan to let Ma Chenyi and the others return alive from this 4 Academies tournament. At that time, without this true dragon of the Empire of Qin, what hope does the Empire of Qin have? Either they will be destroyed by me, or they will have to surrender. From now on, I will be the sole ruler of the eastern region. Feng Wan's expression was arrogant. She sneered at the competition between Great Chu and the Empire of Qin. Without any suspense, the Empire of Qin won all the way. Su Xiaoxiao, Little Gangster Yuan, Ling Tianhan and the others, under Luo Qingtong's guidance and the resources of the Empire of Qin's Sacred Academy, their strength and potential soared. A group of people who were once judged as trash by Tianyu Academy, destined to stay in the trash class, entered the Empire of Qin's Sacred Academy under Luo Qingtong's lead, and participated in the 4 Academies tournament. They competed among the geniuses of the 4 great sacred dynasties. Among them, Ling Tianhan and Sima Zhu were already in the top 50 of the Rising Dragon roll. One of them was good at using both swords, and his swordsmanship was superb. The other was full of poison, and none of the young geniuses could ignore his attacks. Even the geniuses of the Rising Dragon roll who were stronger than him didn't dare to take his attacks lightly. If it wasn't for the fact that the 2 of them didn't have enough time to cultivate, their strength was still shallow, and the power in their bodies was limited, they could have directly charged into the top 10 of the Rising Dragon roll. As for Little Gangster Yuan, Ling Yu, Ling Tianchen and the others, they were also on the Rising Dragon roll. In the competition of non-combat professions, Su Xiaoxiao and Yu Qingya were the most stunning. The Yu Yu's was the rising of the Rising Dragon roll, Yu's Great Yu's. Using half the time that other people used to refine medicine, he was able to refine a medicinal liquid that was twice as powerful as the other people's medicinal liquid. Yuan is Yu. This was the first time that a pure alchemist had defeated a martial artist in battle with his own alchemy skills. In an instant, many of the pill halls of the sects in the hidden world turned their attention to Su Xiaoxiao. And just like Su Xiaoxiao, Yu Qingwei was also the center of attention. This young girl had used her own unique method to refine semi-finished pill elixirs at such a young age. After her battle with Luo Qingtong, she went into seclusion for several months and broke through the realm of medicine master in one fell swoop to refine genuine pill elixirs. He had successfully become an alchemist. Although she was still a distance away from becoming a true alchemist, she was the first person after the evil Dr. Ghost Eye to break through to the alchemist realm in her 20s. Chapter 1611. Translations. Before little Overlord Yuan and the others revealed their strength, no one would have thought that the strength of the geniuses of the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin could reach such a level. Ma Chenye's appearance raised the shocking atmosphere to its peak. Saint Realm Expert. True Dragon Strength. It's the true dragon bloodline of the imperial family of the Empire of Qin. What a rich true dragon strength. His aura has turned into a dragon. No one in the past generations of the imperial family of the Empire of Qin could do this, right? When Ma Chunyi appeared as the main combatant of the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin, the aura he exuded shocked everyone present. Apart from a few people whose cultivation had surpassed the Saint realm and could tell that something was wrong with Ma Chunyi's aura, most people did not know that the Crown Prince of the Great Qin Empire had such strength. Wasn't it said that the Crown Prince of the Empire of Qin had been silent all these years and hadn't made any progress in his strength? Wasn't the Empire of Qin starting to clamor for someone else to be the Crown Prince? How could his strength have increased so much and reached the Saint realm in such a short time? Wasn't this innate strength a little too strong? Was the true dragon bloodline really so extraordinary when it reached a certain level? Everyone in the venue of the Four Academies' grand banquet was shocked. Feng Yuan's expression became extremely cold and severe in an instant. She naturally knew how Ma Chunyi's strength had increased in such a short time. It was because all the aura and strength she had plundered from his body had returned. Good preparation. Ma Chunyi had been silent for a long time, and now his breakthrough was so fierce. Damn it! How could Feng Yuan not be angry that she had single-handedly pushed him to glory at the cost of her own strength? She looked at Ma Chunyi and the others with a gaze so cold that it was about to be mixed with poison. Humph. The more complacent you are now, the more desperate you will be later. She would destroy all the strength Ma Chunyi had obtained from her in front of all the people in the venue of the Four Academies' grand banquet. If he wanted to protect Luo Qingtong, then he could go to hell to protect her. And the people around Luo Qingtong. Feng Yuan's gaze swept across Su Xiaoxiao, Little Overlord Yuan, Sima Zhu, and the others with resentment. The Chu versus the Empire of Qin. The Empire of Qin Saint Academy of Qin wins. With the voice of the judges, the Saint of the Empire of Qin Saint Academy of Qin's victory. The Emperor of the Empire of Qin Academy of Qin's Qin of Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin Academy of Qin, why isn't boss here yet? Su Xiaoxiao's face was full of worry, and Little Overlord Yuan, Sima Zhu, and the others beside her also had a cold expression. Although they had won the victory against the Great Chu Saint Academy, they were not happy at all. Great Yong sent troops to the Empire of Qin and Great Chu to capture all the people related to Boss. Do you think Boss will? Little Overlord Yuan was only halfway through his words when he was interrupted by Sima Zhu and the others. Impossible. Nothing will happen to Boss. Anger appeared on Sima Zhu's delicate face like that of an elf. Yuan Hu, if you curse Boss like this again, I will kill you. He looked at Little Overlord Yuan coldly. I don't want to. Yuan Hu was depressed. Chapter 1612. The Black Field didn't do anything about Great Yong's army either. I don't want anything to happen to Boss. But now, when he said this, his eyes turned red. Sima Zhu and the others were the same. Damn it. Ling Tianhan clenched his fist. I'm going to kill Great Yong. He looked coldly in the direction of the Great Yong sacred dynasty. At this moment, a shocking voice came from the referee's seat. Great Yong versus Great Qi. Great Yong wins. When that voice sounded, it was filled with disbelief. Not only him, but everyone in the Four Academies tournament couldn't believe what they had just heard. Great Yong won? Someone said in disbelief. How long has it been? Yes. The people from the Empire of Qin and Great Chu have only been in the arena for a short while. The people sitting in the Four Academies tournament were full of disbelief. Great Yong won in such a short time? Were the people from Great Qi so weak? They looked at the ring in disbelief, and then they were stunned. On every stage where Great Qi and Great Yong were competing, there was a bloody scene. All the geniuses from the Great Qi Sacred Academy who were fighting against Great Yong were lying on the arena in a miserable state. None of them survived. Everyone was killed by the people from the Great Yong Sacred Academy in one move. The only place where there were survivors was the place where the pharmacists were competing. But even so, those pharmacists were so scared that they fell to the ground. Looking at the bloody scene in front of them, they trembled. It was too scary. Were the people from Great Yong crazy? The people from the Great Qi sacred dynasty looked in the direction of the people from the Great Yong sacred dynasty in disbelief. Especially where Feng Wan was. She didn't even go into the arena, and Great Yong won. The people from the Empire of Qin are here to die. Feng Wan slowly stood up from the spectator's seat. She looked coldly in the direction of the people from the Empire of Qin. He turned a deaf ear to the gazes of everyone present, especially those of the Great Qi Sacred Academy. After today, the entire Eastern Territory would belong to her. Why should she care about the anger of the Qi's people? Once Great Chu and the Empire of Qin were destroyed, Great Qi would be hers sooner or later. At this moment, Feng Wan was indescribably complacent. She raised her head slightly and pointed at the place where Ma Chenyi and the others were. Then, in the next second, the aura around her exploded, surpassing the Saint Realm. Seeing the aura that enveloped her, the people at the 4 academies gathering were all moved. Even where the sects of the hidden world were sitting, many people were looking over. These sects of the hidden world were usually arrogant and didn't pay much attention to the 4 academies gathering in the Sky Spill continent. Only when Ma Chenyi, who had the bloodline of a true dragon and whose aura was at the dragon realm, came out, they took a second look. As for the others, they only paid attention to Su Xiaoxiao and Yu Qingwei. At this moment, seeing Feng Wan's aura surpassing the Saint Realm, they were a little surprised. In the hidden world, it was not rare to have a cultivation base that surpassed the Saint Realm. But what was rare was Feng Wan's age and the Sky Spill continent. Chapter 1613. If such a person were to enter the hidden world, the potential that would erupt from him would be immeasurable. Everyone sat up straight and looked at Feng Wan. As for the people from Great Qi who had been killed by the Sacred Academy, they didn't even spare them a glance. Their skills were not as good as others, so they died. Would they blame Feng Wan, such a monstrous genius, for what happened to these people? The Grand Supreme Dean suddenly stood up where the people of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin were. Beyond the Saint Realm? He looked at the place where Feng Wan was. Feng Wan was beyond the Saint Realm. Then Ma Chenyi and the others, boom. The Great Qi Sacred Dynasty. Luo Qingtong drove her spiritual ship and flew toward the sacred capital of the Great Qi at lightning speed. Among the 4 dynasties, the Chu dynasty, the Yong dynasty, and the Empire of Qin were close to each other and bordered each other. Only the Great Qi Sacred Dynasty was close to the northern region. A huge mountain range running from east to west separated it from the Chu dynasty, the Yong dynasty, and the Empire of Qin. They didn't border each other. In that mountain range, there were many monsters and dangers, comparable to the wilderness of the far west wilderness. Therefore, when Feng Wan was plotting against the Chu dynasty and the Empire of Qin, he didn't do anything to the Great Qi. It was because the distance was too far and it was difficult to control. This was also the reason why Luo Qingtong had a headache. If the Yong dynasty didn't attack the 2 dynasties, she could leave the far west wilderness and go directly to the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin with the Grand Supreme Dean and the others. She could leave for the sacred capital of the Great Qi in advance. Now she needed to cross the huge mountain range and go to the sacred capital of the Great Qi. She didn't know if she could make it in time for the grand meeting of the 4 academies. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong had a headache. Fortunately, when she came, she asked around and found that the grand meeting of the 4 academies had just begun. She still had time. With that thought in mind, Luo Qingtong immediately released the demon-suppressing power of the 9-layered exquisite pagoda. Boom! A holy beast leaped out from the depths of the mountain range in front of her. It wanted to kill her, but it was instantly paralyzed by the aura of the 9-layered exquisite pagoda. It then fell straight to the ground where it was standing. When the surrounding demonic beasts saw this, they immediately swarmed over and ate it. They looked fearfully at the direction Luo Qingtong had left in the spirit ship, not daring to chase after her. The demonic beasts that were hiding in the dark didn't dare to come out after seeing this scene. In this way, Luo Qingtong flew across the dangerous mountain range without any hindrance and headed towards the direction of the holy capital of Great Qi. In the Great Qi dynasty's holy capital, Ma Chenyi and the others looked in the direction of Feng Wuan and the others. Great Yong is actually so powerful. Ma Chenyi's eyes were cold. It seems that they have long been prepared to make us stay here forever. His gaze swept across the group of people from Great Qi who had died miserably. If he guessed correctly, even if they immediately gave up the competition of the 4 academies and left, Feng Wuan wouldn't let them go. Humph. No matter how powerful they are, we won't be afraid. Little Overlord Yuan and the others looked in the direction of Feng Wuan and the others with resentment. Chapter 1614. Even though she knew that Luo Qingtong had the evil Dr. Ghost Eye behind her, she was still fearless. They would never believe that she had nothing to do with Luo Qingtong's accident. If something really happened to Luo Qingtong, they would make the other party pay the price even if they had to sacrifice their lives. Furthermore, the other party was so arrogant. No matter what, they would not lose face for Luo Qingtong. Let's go first. Your Highness, Grand Principal, please take care of yourselves. Ling Tianhan and the others bowed to Mo Chenai and the old principal, and then rushed to the various rings in front of them without hesitation. Even Su Xiaoxiao was no exception. She was a pharmacist. Logically speaking, she could not participate in the battle. However, she had to participate in this battle. Boss, you said that a pharmacist's ability might not only be reflected in treating illnesses and saving lives. I can also stand on my own. I will definitely do it. I will not lose face for you. Su Xiaoxiao raised her head and looked towards the direction of the far west wilderness. Luo Qingtong went there, and then, she never came back. Boss, you watch carefully. We will definitely not lose face for you. Great Yong's trash. Come and fight. On his own arena, Ling Tianhan waved his hand. The 2 long swords in his hands instantly appeared and he pointed them towards the people from the Great Yong Sacred Academy. On the other arena, Sima Ju's face was frozen. The fairy-like young man's eyes were gloomy. His whole body's skin had turned black in an instant. The black color, which was as thick as ink, flowed on his body like liquid. It looked very strange. 10,000 Poison's body. Seeing the physique that Sima Ju revealed, the people from the 4 academies tournament were stunned. It was actually the 10,000 Poison's body. Sima Ju did not reveal all of his physique during the previous battle. Everyone only knew that he was good at using poison. However, they did not know that he actually had the 10,000 Poison's body. Seeing the poison flowing on the young man's body, everyone was shocked. They knew how powerful the 10,000 Poison's body was. However, it was extremely difficult for the 10,000 Poison's body to survive. How did this young man do it? While everyone was shocked, Sima Ju's eyes were cold. What do you want? I want you. The scene of him meeting the girl for the first time flashed in his mind. Sima Ju's eyes had a resolute and determined light. He raised his hand, activating all the toxins in his body to their limits. His gaze was ice-cold as he looked at the people from the Great Yong Sacred Academy. Great's trash. Come and fight. On the other arenas. Little Overlord Yuan, Ling Yu, Ling Tianchen, Chu Wenhao, and the others all unleashed their full strength. Little Tyrant Yuan's skin turned as hard as stone and iron. The purple heavenly silk in Ling Yu's hand danced like waves. The sun, moon and stars bracelet in Ling Tianchen's hand flashed in the air. He would never allow the other party to lose face. They had no regrets. Even if they died, they had no regrets. Great's trash. Come and fight. As their voices rang out in unison, the aura around the group of people rippled out. Shockingly, it was filled with an icy aura. Chapter 1615. Bang! Seeing the strength displayed by Yuan Hu and the rest, Feng Wan instantly raised her hand and smashed the armrest under her. She clenched her teeth as she looked at the scene in front of her. She didn't expect Yuan Hu and the rest to be hiding their strength. The people following by Luo Qingtong's side were actually so strong. It must have been done by the evil Dr. Gui Tong. Damn it. Feng Wan clenched her teeth in hatred. She originally thought that she could easily kill these people, but she didn't expect the result to be like this. Feng Wan's heart was filled with hatred. If it weren't for this, their people from Great Yong would definitely become the focus of this grand gathering of the 4 academies. But now, it was all ruined by these dogs by Luo Qingtong's side. Feng Wan looked at the stage in front of her with an unsightly expression. The people from the Great Yong's sacred academy that she had brought along were being defeated. She had used forbidden techniques to increase their strength, but Yuan Hu and the rest had also used various methods to increase their strength by Luo Qingtong. These people following by Luo Qingtong's side didn't slack off in the slightest after Luo Qingtong's departure. They were proficient in all the methods that the young lady had taught them. In addition, Luo Qingtong had specially refined those weapons for them. They could display more than 200% of their strength. On the other hand, because Feng Wan and the rest had temporarily increased their strength, and in order to prevent suspicion, Feng Wan didn't dare to let them increase their strength too much. Thus, they were immediately suppressed. After all, those old officials of the Great Yong sacred dynasty could still use the excuse that they had suddenly obtained a fortuitous encounter and broke through the barriers that had been blocking them for many years as an excuse. How could these students of the Great Yong Sacred Academy be explained? Looking at the scene in front of her, Feng Wan was so angry that she trembled. Bang! Ling Tianhan kicked away the genius of the Great Yong Sacred Academy who was fighting with him. Then, with a bang, he stabbed the 2 swords in his hands into his opponent's chest. After that, Sima Zhu, Yuan Hu, Ling Yu, Ling Tianchen, Chu Wenhao, and the others took care of their opponents one after another. They looked coldly in the direction of Feng Wan and used a gesture that Luo Qingtong had taught them, clenching their fists and pointing their thumbs down at Feng Wan. In an instant, Feng Wan was so angry that he almost fainted. She didn't know what this gesture meant. However, when Yuan Hu and the others compared her to her, it was obviously not a good metaphor. Bang! She slammed her palms down heavily. Her figure suddenly flew up and appeared on the arena that she belonged to. The Empire of Qin, don't be so smug. Feng Wan's eyes were sinister and vicious. She stared coldly in the direction of the people from the Empire of Qin. Although Yuan Hu and the others had already won, they were all injured. She could kill all of them with just one hand. She would settle the grudge of the humiliation with them at the end of the event. Now, the Crown Prince of the Empire of Qin. Please. Let me have a taste of the skills of the Crown Prince. Let's see if the Empress of Great Yong or the Crown Prince of the Empire of Qin is better. As she spoke, she sneered and flicked her sleeves. She looked at the elegant young man sitting on the spectator stand opposite her. The latter was the main fighter of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin. He was also the biggest hope of the Empire of Qin's sacred dynasty. Once she killed him, she would be able to suppress everyone. By then, she would make Luo Qingtong regret her life in the dark. Boom! Chapter 16:16. Shua. Luo Qingtong's figure appeared in the holy capital of the Deqi dynasty. She put away her spirit boat and flew in the direction of the 4 academies' grand meeting. In the holy capital of the Deqi dynasty, not far from the 4 academies' grand meeting, a group of people was walking around in boredom. There's nothing interesting in the holy capital of the Deqi dynasty. Song Yan, who was walking at the front, was impatient. Her eyes swept over the streets of the holy capital of the Deqi dynasty. She turned a deaf ear to the scene of people hawking their wares. What good things could there be in the secular world of the true Spill continent? The only chance to obtain some treasures was destroyed by an unappreciative woman. And senior brother Yan Yu was protecting her. Thinking of Yan Yuju's reprimand and protection of her, Song Yan's heart burned with anger. At this moment, she glanced over and saw Luo Qingtong rushing towards the four academies' grand meeting. It's her. Seeing Luo Qingtong's figure, Song Yan's eyes turned cold. Then, she laughed. What a coincidence. She thought that this woman wouldn't participate in the four academies' grand meeting. If that was the case, she wouldn't have bothered to waste energy on her. She didn't expect her to rush over here. What? Did she want to catch up with the four academies' grand meeting and get the chance to enter the hidden world? Song Yan's eyes turned. She had just left the four academies' grand meeting and didn't know that the situation inside had changed greatly. Feng Wan had revealed his absolute strength and suppressed everyone. She thought that the Empire of Qin had the upper hand. After all, the Empire of Qin's Holy Academy had a true dragon like Ma Chunyi from the Empire of Qin. And a Sage Realm powerhouse. Thinking that Luo Qingtong was also from the Empire of Qin, Song Yan's eyes turned. Then, she sneered and said to the people of the Breeze Pavilion, "Go and stop her. Don't let her enter the four academies' grand meeting." She pointed at Luo Qingtong, who was rushing towards the venue of the four academies. She would make it so that the other party wouldn't be able to make it in time for this grand meeting of the four academies. Let's see how the other party would snatch senior brother Falling Moon from her in the future. All right. The group of people from the Breeze Pavilion glanced at Luo Qingtong, but they didn't care. She looked like a student from the Sacred Institute who had come to participate in the four academies' grand banquet. Yi Lingshan had no idea how she had offended Song Yan. However, since the latter had given the order, they would naturally do as he said. As for the girl, he was just a student of the Saint Institute. So what if he stopped him? A group of people rushed in front of Luo Qingtong. Before Luo Qingtong could enter the forecourtyard conference, they blocked her at the door. Shwa! Luo Qingtong rushed to the front of the venue. She could already vaguely hear the sounds coming from inside. The words, Great Yong, and the Empire of Qin, were mixed in, sounding extremely sonorous. It was obvious that people from Great Yong and the Empire of Qin were fighting inside. Luo Qingtong's eyes turned cold. She was about to rush in through the main door. At this moment, a group of people blocked her way. Sorry, I'm afraid you won't be able to enter the student of the Saint Institute. A group of people from the Breeze Pavilion stood in front of her, blocking her way to the entrance of the venue. Chapter 16-17. In fact, there was no such rule at all. These people from the Breeze Pavilion were just looking for a reason to stop Luo Qingtong. As for whether she could tell that they were deliberately making things difficult for her, so what if she could tell? If they didn't let her in, then she couldn't enter. Get out of the way. Luo Qingtong's eyes were cold. She looked at these people blocking her way and naturally knew that they were deliberately making things difficult for her. Although she didn't know why they were doing this. At this time, Luo Qingtong didn't have the mood to find out the reason behind it. She took a step forward and was about to force these people from the Breeze Pavilion to retreat. Seeing this, the expressions of the people from the Breeze Pavilion changed. They looked at Luo Qingtong with cold and angry eyes. She actually dared to talk back to them? I said, you can't go in. Otherwise, blame us for taking action. They looked coldly at Luo Qingtong and said coldly. She really didn't know what was good for her. If they didn't let her in, then she should have just left. She actually wanted to force her way in. She really had a death wish. The group looked at Luo Qingtong with a cold expression. Not far away, Song Yan looked at all this and sneered with disdain. She really didn't know what was good for her. She was just a person from the secular world. Who did she think she was? She even dared to ask the people from the Breeze Pavilion to get out of the way. She really didn't know what was good for her. Song Yan was waiting to see how she would be taught a lesson. As for the four academies' grand tournament, she could forget about entering. Song Yan sneered. Luo Qingtong looked at these people blocking her way and her last bit of patience was exhausted. Attack? She looked at the people standing in front of her, and the curve of her lips suddenly curled up coldly. Fine. I'll do as you wish. Boom. In the 4 Academies Grand Tournament, Feng Wuan stood in the arena. The aura around her was violent and cold. She raised her hand and pointed in the direction of Ma Chenyi. She sneered and said, "What? The crown prince of the Empire of Qin doesn't dare? Since you don't dare, then admit defeat." The smile on Feng Wuan's lips was cold. In any case, even if the other party admitted defeat, he wouldn't be able to escape her attacks. She would not let any of these people from the Empire of Qin and Great Chu leave alive. It was just a matter of dying sooner or later. Ma Chenyi admitting defeat to her was exactly what she wanted. It would save her a lot of energy, and she would be able to see the humiliated expressions of the people of the Empire of Qin. Why not? As she thought about it, the smile on her lips became even colder. On the other side, Ma Chenyi had already stood up. Who said I was going to admit defeat? The young man's temperament was gentle and elegant, but his aura was steady and had a rare aura of a king. He looked coldly at Feng Wuan. If Great Yong wants to fight, then let's fight. Your Highness. The members of the royal family who had accompanied Ma Chenyi were so anxious that they were sweating profusely. Your Highness. Feng Wuan's strength has already surpassed the Saint Realm. You are only at the Saint Realm. Even if you have the aura of the true dragon bloodline, you have just come out of seclusion not long ago. Your aura and the strength of the Saint Realm have not completely merged. Your Highness. Please reconsider. Your Highness, please think for the sake of the Empire of Qin and the royal family. You can't be hurt. The crowd tried to dissuade him, but Ma Chenyi raised his hand and stopped them. Chapter 16-18. Ma Chenyi's expression was firm and resolute. A cold and resolute expression appeared on his youthful and calm face. Feng Wuan has revealed his strength at this moment. Previously, he had recklessly dispatched troops to 2 dynasties. I'm afraid that great changes have already occurred in the Empire of Qin and Great Chu. This prince will hold her back. You all immediately return to the Empire of Qin. In addition, tell Imperial Father that no matter what, he cannot hand over the people related to Luo Qingtong. Feng Wuan's thoughts are sinister. Since he has already set his sights on Great Chu and the Empire of Qin, he will definitely not let this matter rest. There's no point in handing over the people. He will only be labeled as a coward. Ma Chenyi's voice was neither fast nor slow as he made arrangements for the people of the Empire of Qin. His status as the heir to the throne of the Empire of Qin was definitely not undeserved. Even if he hadn't seen through 80% of Feng Wuan's plan, he had already seen through 60%. Therefore, he absolutely could not admit defeat. Otherwise, he was afraid that none of the people of the Empire of Qin would be able to return alive. Moreover, he looked coldly in the direction of Feng Wuan. Luo Qingtong still hadn't arrived. Although he didn't dare to believe it, Ma Chenyi had to admit that the possibility of Luo Qingtong's misfortune was too great. The young girl had saved him from danger and saved him from his predicament. His strength all depended on her. That was why he was able to recover and break through to the Qing realm. People said that the true dragon of the Empire of Qin had been dormant for many years. Once it rose, it would soar out of the abyss and roar to the 9 heavens. But who would have known that he was able to break out of his predicament completely because of Luo Qingtong's help? Without Luo Qingtong's help, there wouldn't be today's true dragon of the Empire of Qin. Feng Wuan had harmed her. He definitely wouldn't let him off. Even if he had to sacrifice his life, he would make him pay the price. Leave. As he spoke, he swept his body and was about to leap onto the arena in front of him. Right at this moment. Boom. A loud noise suddenly came from the entrance of the venue. Then, with a muffled bang, a figure instantly flew out from the gate, coughing up blood as it brushed against the ground. It flew for nearly a kilometer before crashing heavily into the ground not far from the spectator stands. Soon after, a figure strode in from the main entrance. In a cold voice, he stated, "To deal with your great Yong, is there any need for His Imperial Highness, the Crown Prince, to take action? I'll do it. Following this voice, Ma Chenyi, Grand Principal, Yuanhu, Sima Ju, and the others all looked towards the direction of the entrance in surprise. Qingtong? Baby? Boss? Everyone's voice was filled with joy. Little Overlord Yuan, Sima Ju, and the others were crying tears of joy. Boss. It's Boss. She's fine. Boss is fine. Everyone hugged each other. From the initial apprehension to despair and grief, and then to the current surprise and joy, their emotions fluctuated wildly. There was simply no way to control their emotions. Boss didn't die. She's fine. She made it. Qingtong. Ma Chenyi looked at the figure who stepped through the gate and walked straight towards them. The emotions in his eyes fluctuated violently. There was a faint flicker of water inside. Even someone as calm as Ma Chenyi couldn't control himself in front of such a huge fluctuation of emotions. Luo Qingtong was fine. This was probably the best news he had heard in his life. Chapter 16-19. Fortunately, she's fine. You little doll. He looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong, crying and laughing at the same time. This stinky girl worried him to death. Damn it. The next time he approved her leave, he would be a pig. That's not right. This little doll will go to the hidden world in the future. She doesn't need him to approve her leave. Thinking of the Grand Principal, he felt depressed. Doesn't this mean that he is destined to lose face in the future? While everyone from the Great Qin Empire was so excited that they were unable to control themselves, on the arena, Feng Yuan's gaze was cold as he looked at the young woman floating over. Luo Qingtong. You're finally not a coward anymore? Are you here to die? She sneered at Luo Qingtong. The latter narrowed her eyes at her and didn't reply. She just raised her hand and threw a black package over. Feng Yuan, Empress of Great Yong. Luo Qingtong's voice was indifferent. This is a small gift I prepared for you. I hope you like it. Humph. Deliberately mystifying. Feng Yuan sneered and looked at the black package that Luo Qingtong threw over. He raised his hand and caught it. With her strength, she wasn't afraid of Luo Qingtong playing tricks. She wanted to scare her. Dream on. However, just as her hand touched the package, in an instant, peng, the package exploded, and the two things inside rolled out. In an instant, the smell of blood filled the air. This is... Feng Yuan looked at the two things that rolled out of the package in shock. They were two human heads. They were the heads of the two saint-level ministers that she had sent to attack Great Chu and the Empire of Qin. Luo Qingtong. You. Are you surprised? Luo Qingtong's lips curled up slightly. She looked at Luo Qingtong's eyes, which were filled with blood-red light, but cold to the core. There was not the slightest hint of a smile in his eyes. There's an even bigger surprise waiting for you. You have to stay calm. Right. Luo Qingtong looked at her indifferently and smiled. The people you sent to Great Chu and Great Yong are all dead. Great Yong has already been destroyed. Luo Qingtong's red lips parted slightly. The distance between the Qi and the three dynasties was quite far, and there was also a huge mountain range separating them. Naturally, the news would not reach them so quickly. She didn't mind giving Feng Yuan a surprise first. Impossible. If the two kills that Luo Qingtong had just thrown out were shocking to Feng Yuan, then it would be shocking. Then what Luo Qingtong said next, to her, was unbelievable. That's impossible. Within Great Yong, she had used forbidden techniques to increase her strength and vassals loyal to her. Among them, there were several saint-level experts. Even if the people of Great Chu and Great Qin realized her scheme and joined forces to attack Great Yong, it would be impossible for them to shake the foundation of her nation. How could it be destroyed by someone? Moreover, it was in such a short time. How long had it been since she left Great Yong? Feng Wan was not willing to believe it at all. Luo Qingtong. Don't think that this can confuse my mind. I will never believe your words. In Feng Wan's view, Luo Qingtong deliberately said these words to attack her. She would never believe it. However, as soon as she finished speaking, a figure hurriedly walked in from outside. What she said is true. Chapter 1620. Your Majesty, this is a report from the border. Great Yong has been destroyed. It's the Black Field that sent out troops. Ming Zun personally took action and destroyed the holy capital in a day. In fact, Yi Qianxian had only taken action for a few seconds. But this was something that outsiders didn't know. They only knew that the holy capital of Great Yong was destroyed in a day. The strength of the Black Field was simply terrifying. What? This is impossible. This is impossible. Feng Yuan was hysterical. She looked in the direction of De Qi's people, almost going crazy. You are all in cahoots with her. I don't believe it. Her eyes were cold. How could this be possible? She had just become the Empress of Great Yong and was so smug about becoming the ruler of the entire eastern region. How could Great Yong be destroyed overnight? The Black Field sent out troops and Ming Zun personally took action? How could this be possible? He was worried about the death of the evil Dr. Ghost Eye and didn't even have enough time to grieve over her death. How could he possibly take action against Great Yong? If she hadn't calculated this, how could she have sent troops to the two dynasties and forced them to hand over Luo Qingtong and everyone related to her? She even wanted to slaughter all the geniuses and experts of the three dynasties at the Four Academies tournament. It was because she had calculated that Ming Zun wouldn't have the time and energy to care about Luo Qingtong and the three dynasties. How could she have failed under such circumstances? This is impossible. Feng Wan's voice was hysterical. At the same time, the Great Qin and Great Chu also received reports from the various dynasties. After reading the news, everyone was shocked and broke out in a cold sweat. This Feng Wan is too sinister and vicious. We were so close. Our two dynasties would have been destroyed. Yes. Great Yong's hidden strength is so strong. We were all fooled by them before. Everyone rejoiced and felt a lingering fear. This was especially true for the people of Great Chu. They were the ones with the weakest national strength. Fortunately, they had Luo Qingtong, the holy conferred princess. Everyone looked at Luo Qingtong with gratitude and awe. As for Feng Wan, after the people of Great Chu and the Empire of Qin received the news one after another, they had no choice but to believe it. Destroyed? Has my Great Yong really been destroyed? She clenched her fists tightly. His nails, as sharp as iron, pierced into his palm. Because he used too much strength, with a ka sound, those nails were all broken. It's you. Feng Wan looked at Luo Qingtong with hatred and madness. His eyes were cold and vicious, as if they were about to concoct poison. You did it. The other party had not appeared for so long. She thought that she was a coward. From the looks of it, the other party must have gone to plot these things. All of his schemes and ambitions had gone down the drain. The other party deserved to die. Losing to the evil Dr. Ghost Eye was enough to make Feng Wan collapse. Now, there was Luo Qingtong. If she had known that the other party would become like this, causing all of her efforts to go to waste, she would have killed her the first time she attacked her. She would not have just blinded her eyes with poison. Luo Qingtong, I want you dead. Her eyes were like a viper's as she looked at Luo Qingtong. Then, her entire body rushed towards the girl. Qingtong. Chapter 1621. When they saw Luo Qingtong coming, they were so happy that they forgot about Feng Wan's strength. Even Ma Chenyi went up the stage with the determination to die. Luo Qingtong went to the far west wilderness this time. How much had her strength improved? Could she be a match for Feng Wan? Everyone was nervous. Even if they were always by Luo Qingtong's side and witnessed the various miracles created by the girl, they couldn't completely relax. After all, Feng Wuan, she had surpassed the sage realm. When Luo Qingtong went to the far west wilderness, her strength was only at the martial emperor realm. Even if she had a great opportunity, it was impossible for her to reach the level of surpassing the sage realm in such a short time, right? Sure enough, the aura around Luo Qingtong's body spread out. It was the cultivation of the sage realm. When everyone saw this, their hearts sank instantly. This increment in strength was unparalleled and terrifying. But it was still not enough. Between the sage realm and surpassing the sage realm, even if there was only one step, it was an insurmountable gap. Not good. Ma Chenyi and the others stood up at once. On the other side, Feng Wuan sneered. Haha. Sage realm? Luo Qingtong, it seems that you have obtained a great opportunity during this time. It's good to have clung to the black field's thigh. Don't you think so? She looked at the aura around Luo Qingtong with a cynical expression. He didn't know how much the other party had paid in the dark domain to raise his strength to the sage realm. But that was the end of it. Using all kinds of medicine to forcibly raise her cultivation, she couldn't even display 1/10 of her true strength. The aura of the sage realm of the other party only looked intimidating. Luo Qingtong, I'm going to torture you to death in front of everyone. Humph. You destroyed my conspiracy and destroyed my great Yong, so what? I still have a chance to turn the tables in the 4 Academies tournament. As long as I win the 4 Academies tournament, with my cultivation surpassing the sage realm, I will be able to gain the favor of those top sects in the hidden world. At that time, I will enter those top sections. What can you do to me? Even the Black Field's Ming Zun may not be able to do anything to me. As Feng Wuan said this, her heart was filled with pride and resentment. She was proud that Luo Qingtong couldn't do anything to her, and she would still have the opportunity to make a comeback in the future. She hated the fact that such an outstanding and powerful man like Yi Qianmin couldn't be used by her. And she still had to be dealt with. As she thought this thought, a burst filled Phil's anger's heart. Luo Qingtong, die. Hers is the sage emperor, Qingtong, a Feng Luo Qingtong. The power that erupted was extremely violent, as if it could shatter mountains and shatter rocks. Seeing that attack and Feng Wuan's figure rushing over, Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed slightly. Bang! Just as that palm was about to hit her, Luo Qingtong raised her hand. She stretched out her palm and caught Feng Wuan's palm. Then she suddenly clenched her 5 fingers, crack. Feng Wuan's 5 fingers were fiercely folded into her palm. When she wrapped them into a fist, she suddenly lifted her foot and kicked. Bang! Feng Wuan's figure was like a bowed prawn in an instant, and he was sent flying by her kick. Boom! Feng Wuan's figure brushed against the ground of the arena. He moved horizontally for nearly 100 meters before he stopped. You? Barely managing to stand firm, Feng Wuan looked at Luo Qingtong with eyes full of disbelief. What's wrong? Is it hard to believe? Luo Qingtong looked at her indifferently. The bloody light in her eyes flickered coldly. Chapter 1622. Following Luo Qingtong's words, everyone was stunned. In an instant, there was a muffled bang. Luo Qingtong stomped her feet heavily on the floor. Then, like a red lightning bolt, she flew towards Feng Wuan. Bang! Luo Qingtong's right leg swept towards Feng Wuan. Feng Wuan didn't believe that Luo Qingtong's strength in the sage realm could resist her strength that surpassed the sage realm and even beat her back. Even if she didn't use all of her strength that surpassed the sage realm. After all, there was a huge gap between the sage realm and the sage realm. She didn't believe that a sage realm cultivator could resist her and beat her back. I don't believe it. Luo Qingtong, how can you be stronger than me? I don't believe it. Bang! At the same time, Feng Wuan lifted his leg to meet Luo Qingtong's. Their legs collided in midair. In an instant, there was a boom. Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed with a bloody light. Her toes suddenly pointed towards a certain part of Feng Wuan's leg. In an instant, the strength of Feng Wuan's leg suddenly decreased. At the same time, the aura of Luo Qingtong's leg was like a sharp knife, fiercely stabbing into the aura of Feng Wuan's leg. Breaking the surface with a single point, straight to the point. Boom! When Luo Qingtong's leg kicked away Feng Wuan's leg, it also fiercely brushed through the air and swept Feng Wuan's face, sending her flying. Bang! Feng Wuan's figure hit the nearby pillar. She covered her face. Her leg was in severe pain and numbness. She looked at Luo Qingtong in front of her in disbelief. You? How could this be? How was this possible? At this time, Feng Wuan had no choice but to believe that Luo Qingtong's Sage Realm strength did indeed have the qualifications to contend with him. The other party's aura was terrifyingly thick, and the nature of his power was dense and solid. This kind of aura and strength was not what she thought it was, an illusory strength that relied on drugs to increase. It was no exaggeration to say that she would have been defeated by Luo Qingtong in a single move if it wasn't for her strength surpassing the Sage Realm. How could he be so strong? How could he be so strong? Feng Wuan's heart was on the verge of going crazy. He simply couldn't believe what he was seeing. Feng Wuan, I already said. Luo Qingtong flicked the dust off her feet and said casually, if you don't use your full strength, then you can just wait for death. After saying that, Luo Qingtong's figure flew out again and attacked Feng Wuan violently. Beyond the Saint Realm? Unrivaled? She would let Feng Wuan know that his strength surpassing the Saint Realm was not worth mentioning at all in front of her. Even if she only used the strength of the Saint Realm, it was enough to kill him. Boom! As Luo Qingtong's figure attacked Feng Wuan, the people in the stands came back to their senses as if they had just woken up from a dream. Oh my God! The crowd looked at the scene on the stage in disbelief. They almost couldn't believe their own eyes. A Saint Realm expert forced a surpassing Saint Realm expert to retreat? Not only that, but he also took the initiative to attack and completely suppress the opponent. If it weren't for the fact that they were certain that Feng Wuan's strength had indeed surpassed the Saint Realm and that Luo Qingtong's aura was completely that of the Saint Realm, they would have thought that they had seen wrongly. The one with the cultivation surpassing the Saint Realm should be Luo Qingtong. The one with the cultivation of the Saint Realm should be Feng Wuan. Chapter 1623. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock. Even those from the sects that had come to watch the match looked at Luo Qingtong with astonishment in their eyes. It wasn't because of anything else. In the hidden world, Luo Qingtong was a genius powerhouse that could easily deal with a powerhouse that surpassed the Saint Realm. But, without exception, they were all direct descendants of top sects and influences. Ordinary sects and influences would never be able to raise someone like that. But for someone like Luo Qingtong, who was born in the true Spill continent where the spiritual energy was inferior to the hidden world, to have such talent and strength, just how terrifying was this? In their eyes, Feng Wuan could cultivate to a level that surpassed the Saint Realm in the true Spill continent where the spiritual energy was so barren. That meant that his talent and strength were already at the peak. But Luo Qingtong, who could easily deal with her with the strength of a Saint Realm powerhouse, was the peak of the peak. With this talent and strength, once she entered the hidden world, she would be like a dragon swimming in the vast sea. She would be able to soar into the skies for thousands of miles. As everyone's eyes were filled with surprise, on the side of the Empire of Qin's Holy Academy, the highest dean had already slapped his thigh. Haha. I knew that you could do it. Haha. You really didn't disappoint me. The highest dean laughed. The group of people from the Empire of Qin's Holy Academy glanced at him, thinking, don't think that we didn't see you nervously pinching your thigh a moment ago. Now you're saying that you've already anticipated this? However, no one dared to tear down his facade. The group of people from the Empire of Qin's Holy Academy looked at the arena with excitement. Haha. Highest Dean, the best thing you did was to recklessly recruit Luo Qingtong into the Empire of Qin's Holy Academy. That's right. The group of people from the Empire of Qin's Holy Academy smiled as they looked at the Highest Dean. If it weren't for the Highest Dean's persistence, the Empire of Qin's Holy Academy wouldn't have had the chance to return alive, let alone return in defeat. Where did this glory come from? They all looked at the scene in the arena with smiles on their faces. As for Su Xiaoxiao, Little Overlord Yuan, and the others, they were already so excited that they couldn't control themselves. Haha. I knew boss would be fine. Little Overlord Yuan said with a smug look. Before he could finish his sentence, Sima Ju knocked his head harshly. You already knew? Hee hee. He sneered as he looked at Yuan Hu. Who was the one who said something happened to boss? Ha. Little tyrant Yuan laughed dryly and denied it decisively. Is that me? This is impossible. That's definitely not me. You must have remembered wrongly. Everyone looked at him with disdain. Where's your shame? There was nothing left. Little Overlord Yuan decisively replied with an affirmative look. Ma Chenyi, on the other hand, had a complicated look in his eyes as he looked at the fiery figure of the young lady on the stage. Luo Qingtong was really getting stronger and stronger. He originally thought that after coming out of seclusion this time, he would have the chance to protect her after fusing with the bloodline power in his body and breaking through to the Saint Realm. But he didn't expect that she would once again walk ahead of him. She reached the Saint Realm as a martial emperor. Then, she used her Saint Realm body to resist Feng Wuan's transcending Saint Realm. Luo Qingtong, how much potential and surprises do you have that haven't been fully revealed? Chapter 1624. Boom. In the arena, Luo Qingtong's figure had already arrived in front of Feng Wuan. At this moment, boom. An extremely ferocious and domineering figure, like a slithering dragon or snake, rushed from the front in an instant and lashed towards Luo Qingtong. It was a long whip as thick as a python. The segments of bone on the whip flickered with a pale and cold light under the sun. Upon closer inspection, it was surprisingly pieced together by segments of human bones. This long bone whip was about 9 feet long. Under the infusion and dance of Feng Wuan's strength, it instantly grew to a length of tens of meters. Like a venomous snake, it swiftly attacked Luo Qingtong. The sharp sound of wind cutting through the air was like the wailing of 10,000 ghosts and the shrill howls of 10,000 demons in people's ears. It was obvious that this was an extremely evil and powerful weapon. In the hands of Feng Wuan, her strength had been greatly enhanced. Bang! Seeing the huge bone whip rumbling towards her, Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes and dodged to the side. In an instant, the tip of the long bone whip heavily bombarded the arena. In an instant, the ground of the arena, which had been reinforced by special steel and was capable of withstanding the attacks of those who had surpassed the Saint Realm, was blasted into a huge pit. Luo Qingtong. Feng Wuan's expression was gloomy and fierce. Holding the long bone whip in her hand, she floated in the air like a vengeful ghost. Her face was hideous and distorted to a terrifying extent. Luo Qingtong's kick just now had directly swept off the veil and human skin mask on her face. At this moment, the hideous and terrifying wound on her face, revealing the eerie white bones, flesh, and fat, was revealed. At this moment, Feng Wuan no longer had the complacency and beauty of the Empress of Great Yong. Even the evil spirits of hell were much prettier than her. Ah! So disgusting. So the Empress of Great Yong looks like this? A burst of exclamations faintly sounded in the surroundings. Many people felt extremely disgusted when they saw Feng Yuan's extremely ferocious and terrifying face. The previous Feng Yuan looked both beautiful and strong. Now that his mask was torn off by Luo Qingtong, he turned from extremely beautiful to extremely ugly. The impact he gave people was not ordinary. Luo Qingtong. I want you dead. Feng Yuan's expression was ferocious and cold. The expression on her face twitched fiercely. Then, with a boom, that white bone-long whip that had sunk who knew how many meters deep into the floor of the arena, suddenly swept out. Like a venomous dragon emerging from its cave, it swept towards Luo Qingtong, who had just landed on the ground. The terrifying and violent power contained within the whip directly shattered the floor of the arena. In an instant, pieces of the refined iron floor were sent flying by the whip's wind. Together with the huge white bone whip, they blasted towards Luo Qingtong. Boom! Even an expert who had surpassed the Saint Realm might not be able to withstand the power of this attack. Buzz! Luo Qingtong looked at the whip's wind that carried countless fragments of refined iron flying towards her. Her eyes instantly focused. Life and death yin-yang sword. She raised her hand. In an instant, a long sword with alternating black and white light appeared in her hand. Chapter 1625. Heaven Conquering Art, First Form, Seizing Heaven's Fortune. Boom! Following Luo Qingtong's attack. In an instant, the sword radiated a heavenly light, eternal desolation. The sword radiance that seemed to stun time blasted out from the long sword in her hand. In an instant, it flew forward like a blade or a moon. In an instant, it collided with the huge white bone whip that Feng Yuan had thrown over. But in an instant, boom boom boom. A series of violent explosions sounded. The bone whip in Feng Yuan's hand, which was like a divine weapon capable of severing lives, broke into pieces. Bang bang bang. The sky was filled with white bone powder, mixed with sharp and mournful screams. Many vengeful spirits were revealed. It was obvious that Feng Yuan had killed many people in the process of refining this whip. Among them, there were even many members of Great Yang's imperial family. Heavens! Look! At this moment, everyone in the surroundings opened their eyes wide. They looked in shock at the figures of the vengeful spirits revealed by Feng Yuan's broken bone whip. Among them, there were even the shadows of Great Yang's imperial family. Heavens! Didn't this mean that everyone in Great Yang's imperial family was killed by Feng Yuan? Oh my God! Everyone's eyes widened, almost unable to believe what they were seeing. Apart from Feng Yuan, almost all the members of Great Yang's imperial family were killed. They were wondering who did it. Right, didn't Feng Yuan say that it was Luo Qingtong who did it? He even sent troops to capture everyone related to Luo Qingtong. But it turned out that these people were killed by her. Feng Yuan was simply a thief crying out to catch a thief. The people from the empire of Qin and Great Yong jumped up and almost cursed. Fuck, this Feng Yuan is too shameless. His heart is like a poisonous scorpion. He killed his own blood-related members of Great Yong's imperial family and even framed our princess. Exactly. Qingtong has really been wronged. F***ck. Fortunately, Empress Dowager Yan Shi and His Highness the Crown Prince insisted on protecting the people related to her. Otherwise, wouldn't this venomous woman have succeeded? This is absolutely disgusting. The people from the Empire of Qin and Great Chu were furious. As for the people from Great Qi, Great Yong, and the sects from the various hidden worlds, they looked at Feng Yuan with disgust and loathing. Especially the people from the sects of the hidden world. Originally, they thought highly of Feng Yuan and wanted to help her at the last moment. When he saw this scene and heard the exclamations of the surrounding people, he immediately dispelled this idea. For such a vicious woman, no matter how talented she was just like a dormant poisonous snake. No one knew when she would suddenly bite back and bite them. After all, he had even harmed his own blood relatives. Moreover, he was so vicious and merciless that he had exterminated his entire family. Even if such a person was given to them, they wouldn't dare to accept it. It was too terrifying. Everyone shook their heads. As for the people from the Great Yong sacred dynasty, their faces were indescribably ugly. The people of Great Yong's imperial family were actually slaughtered by Feng Yuan. Many people who didn't know the inside story felt a wave of disillusionment in their hearts. They looked at Feng Yuan with unbearable disgust and disgust. Deserted by all, despised by all. Chapter 1626. And this wasn't what she couldn't accept the most. What she couldn't accept the most was, evil Dr. Ghost Eye. You are evil Dr. Ghost Eye. Feng Wan's voice screamed. She looked at the girl who was floating in the air. Luo Qingtong held the black and white long sword in front of her chest. The aura around her was surging and bursting. All of these coincided with the figure of evil Dr. Gui Tong, who had almost killed her in the sage monarch's tomb. Luo Qingtong was evil Dr. Ghost Eye. She was Yi Jiao in the far west wilderness. Ah! Feng Wan almost instantly screamed hysterically. She couldn't believe the facts in front of her eyes. Luo Qingtong was evil Dr. Ghost Eye. She was the evil Dr. Ghost Eye whom she hated to death but couldn't get rid of. She had always been at a disadvantage under the other party's hands. The woman she hated the most and couldn't deal with the most. The woman who stole all the glory she should have gotten and ruined all her plans. She also stole the evil Dr. Ghost Eye from the most outstanding man she liked. How could this be? Who was Luo Qingtong? She could easily play with her in the palm of her hand. If it wasn't for her disdain to deal with her, she would have played her to death in the eastern fence country. She blinded the other party's eyes with poison. With just a few words, she made the people of the imperial family of the Tianyu Empire recklessly deal with her. And she just had to watch the show from the side. It was such a lowly person in her eyes who she didn't even want to deal with. But in the end, she stepped on her head, destroyed everything she had and stole the man she couldn't even get close to. She trampled everything she had into the mud? How could this be? Feng Wan's heart collapsed. Luo Qingtong looked at her indifferently. She held the sword in one hand and floated in the air. She didn't move at all when Feng Wan revealed her identity. Before she took action, Luo Qingtong knew that she couldn't hide her identity. But it didn't matter. She didn't need to hide her identity anymore. To be able to give Feng Wan a strong blow, she was very happy. Luo Qingtong knew how much Feng Wan despised the original host and how much he hated her identity as the evil Dr. Ghost Eye. Now that the two identities were combined into one, Feng Wan would most likely collapse. She liked to see the other party looking down on her but being ruthlessly stepped on. From the inside out, she would not let him off. While Feng Wan's heart was crumbling, everyone around the stands was also shocked by her words. Evil Dr. Ghost Eye? Luo Qingtong is actually that evil Dr. Ghost Eye? Oh my god. Everyone was dumbfounded. It was the same for the people from the sects in the hidden world. Who was evil Dr. Gui Tong? Blackfield was an alchemist that was highly sought after in the entire True Spill continent. Even in the hidden world, there were some people who had heard of her name. The pills that Luo Qingtong refined were brought into the hidden world. The degree of perfection of the pills refined was not something that an average person could achieve. Even a pill saint who had comprehended the laws of alchemy and had first-rate talent in alchemy might not be able to refine pills to such a degree of perfection. The existence of evil Dr. Ghost Eye had already attracted the attention of the hidden world. However, because Luo Qingtong refined low-level pills, they thought that Luo Qingtong's alchemy skills were shallow, so they didn't care too much. Chapter 1627. The people of Great Shu were even more dumbfounded. Their conferred princess was actually the evil Dr. Ghost Eye. Heavens! No wonder Blackfield and the evil Dr. Ghost Eye had sent such a huge gift when Empress Dowager and Empress Dowager got married. At that time, they had thought that Luo Qingtong was lucky to be able to gain the favor of the evil Dr. Ghost Eye. Even they had benefited from it. Who would have thought that Luo Qingtong was the evil Dr. Ghost Eye? Right when everyone was shocked in their hearts, Feng Yuan's wild cries suddenly stopped abruptly. Her eyes were blood-red and cold as she looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong. With a swoosh, she threw away the bone whip in her hand. Her entire body retreated rapidly. Luo Qingtong. Evil Dr. Ghost Eye. She gritted her teeth fiercely as she looked at Luo Qingtong with an extremely vicious gaze. Good. Very good. You're all gathered together. Haha. Her voice was filled with laughter, and then she suddenly waved her hand. Come out. Saint Corpse Puppet. As Feng Wan's voice sounded, a figure that was almost like gold and iron appeared beside Feng Wan in an instant. That figure was tall and sturdy, and he was still wearing the attire of the Great Yong imperial family. That face was wooden and greenish-black, and there was no sign of life. It was that transcendent saint from the Great Yong imperial family who had died. It was unknown what method Feng Wan used to lock his strength in his body. At this moment, his eyes were lifeless, and there was no movement as he stood beside Feng Wan. However, his formidable aura at the saint realm was extremely surging and shocking to the extreme. The surrounding air was being cut apart bit by bit. There were traces of cracks all around. The aura of this transcendent saint from Great Yong was not the slightest bit weaker than when he was alive. Instead, it was even stronger. Luo Qingtong, you didn't expect it, right? I still have such a trump card. Feng Wan sneered and looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong. So what if the other party was the evil Dr. Ghost Eye? When she was in the Saint King's tomb, who knew what kind of opportunity she had to have such strength to be able to resist her blood demon vines? However, this was not the Saint King's tomb. She didn't have anything to borrow. On the other hand, the Saint Realm puppet he'd refined had retained all the strength he'd possessed when he was alive. Moreover, all of them had been raised to the peak. Undying and indestructible, unable to hurt or feel pain. What could Luo Qingtong use to fight with her? There was no spirit of the Sage King's tomb here for her to deal with him. Haha. Luo Qingtong, just wait to be torn to shreds by this saint corpse. Feng Wan also threw caution to the wind. Originally, she was prepared to keep this saint-level puppet as a trump card and didn't intend to take it out. But now, everything was ruined by Luo Qingtong. Even the matter of the Great Yong royal family being killed, everyone knew that she was the one who did it. She was already the target of public criticism, so what was there to be afraid of? Boom! As Feng Wan's voice sounded, in an instant, the purple and green light in her eyes suddenly soared. In the next second, the saint-level puppet moved in response and rushed towards Luo Qingtong. The strength of the energy rippling out from its body almost split the sky, leaving a wide crack in the sky. The powerful aura emitted from it caused the expressions of the people below the stage to change. Not good. It's a saint-level puppet corpse. Quick! Go and save her. A group of people from the Empire of Qin and Great Chu hurriedly responded by slapping the table and flying out to save her. Chapter 1628. Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed, and she dodged the attack of the Saint Realm puppet. The blood-red light in her eyes flickered, and the scene inside and outside the Saint Realm puppet was completely revealed to her. She saw that there was a soul sealed inside the Saint Realm puppet. It was the appearance of that Saint Realm transcendent from the Great Yong sacred dynasty's imperial family. He was screaming in pain, and streaks of purple light bound around him, controlling him to attack Luo Qingtong. It turned out that this Saint Realm transcendent from the Great Yong sacred dynasty had been refined into a puppet by Feng Wan while he was still alive. This method of refining living people into corpses was powerful, but it was extremely evil and sinister. Those who were refined into living corpses would never be able to reincarnate. Not only that, but they would also have to endure the inhumane pain of being refined into a living corpse at all times. The corpse refined in this way would be full of resentment, and its strength would be preserved completely. In the future, it might even be able to break through and continue to grow. Presumably, Feng Wan also had the same idea, which was why he refined this Saint Realm transcendent from the Great Yong sacred dynasty's imperial family into a living corpse. However, this method of refining living people into corpses had the greatest drawback. That was, the living corpse absolutely could not escape the control of the person who refined it. Otherwise, it would immediately backfire. Because it was refined to death, living corpses would retain a strong resentment and killing intent towards the person who refined it to death. Once it was out of control, no matter what happened, it would immediately backfire on its master, and it would not rest until it was dead. It could be said that this was a double-edged sword. Obviously, Feng Yuan also knew this. Therefore, she was using eye techniques to control it. He didn't use any ordinary puppetry techniques. Luo Qingtong's eyes flitted past the purple light binding the Saint Realm Transcendent's soul, and her lips suddenly curled up. If it was anyone else, Feng Yuan's arrangement could be said to be foolproof. But she just had to meet me. Break. Luo Qingtong retracted the annihilation light that was about to blast out and shouted. In an instant, the blood-red light in her eyes soared and covered her entire eyeball. She activated the eye technique in her eyes. At the same time, pop pop pop. A soft sound that ordinary people could not hear rang out. In an instant, the purplish-green light entangling the soul of that transcendent saint of Great Yang's imperial family broke apart. Their light dimmed. The soul of the transcendent saint let out a roar and broke free from their restraints. In an instant, the saint-level puppet that was pouncing towards Luo Qingtong stopped in its tracks. He abruptly turned around and looked at Feng Yuan, who was not far behind him. Then, he let out a shrill cry that was even sharper than before and pounced towards her. At this time, Feng Yuan was looking at Luo Qingtong's direction with cold eyes. His eyes flashed with complacent and cold killing intent. Luo Qingtong was definitely doomed this time. However, she just thought of this when she saw the Saint Realm puppet suddenly turn around and pounce towards her. What? Feng Yuan's eyes were filled with shock. She retreated rapidly. At the same time, the purplish-green light in her eyes flashed rapidly, trying to control this saint-level puppet. Chapter 1629. How is this possible? Feng Yuan's heart was violently shaken. Her ocular technique had failed? How was this possible? How could her ocular technique have failed? Ever since Feng Yuan sacrificed the members of the Great Yong imperial family, her ocular technique had been completely stabilized. If not for this, she would not have been able to cooperate with Qin Yan to kill that transcendent saint of the Great Yong imperial family and refine him into a living corpse. Under such circumstances, how could her ocular technique have failed? This was absolutely impossible. What on earth had Luo Qingtong done? Feng Yuan looked at Luo Qingtong in horror. With one look, her pupils instantly shrank. Blood-red eyes? She looked at Luo Qingtong's blood-red eyes in shock. The whites of the girl's eyes and eyeballs were almost suffused with the color of blood. These were definitely not ordinary eyes, nor were they the after-effects of Luo Qingtong's recovery as she had previously thought. She also had different colored pupils. After her pair of clear eyes were destroyed by her, her eyes had recovered, and they were actually different colored pupils. And it seemed that they were even stronger than the previous pair of different colored pupils, as well as her own. Feng Yuan's heart felt as if it had been struck hard. At this moment, her heart was filled with anger, regret, resentment, and all sorts of emotions. At this moment, the saint's corpse had already rushed in front of her. Ah! Feng Yuan screamed shrilly. The saint-level puppet pounced on her and bit her crazily. Being refined to death, and being of the same bloodline, the more pain this saint's corpse suffered while being refined by Feng Yuan, the more resentment it had towards her. It tore at Feng Yuan's body in a frenzy. In an instant, large chunks of flesh were torn off the latter's body, exposing her flesh and bones. Feng Yuan screamed miserably. She wanted to resist, but how powerful was this saint's corpse? It had already been a saint when it was alive, and after being refined by Feng Yuan, its strength had increased to the level of a saint master. How ruthless Feng Yuan's refinement had been back then was how miserable she was now. Ah! She struggled desperately and screamed. The group of people from the Great Shu and the Empire of Qin who had rushed over to rescue Luo Qingtong stopped the moment the saint's corpse turned around and pounced on Feng Yuan. At this moment, he was even more shocked as he watched Feng Yuan being bitten crazily. What was going on? The living corpse refined by Feng Yuan actually suffered a backlash? Haha. She deserves it. The Grand Supreme Dean laughed loudly, then spat fiercely in Feng Yuan's direction. Vicious thoughts and evil intentions. To be able to refine such a corpse using the technique of refining a living person's corpse, and using her own blood to refine it, Feng Yuan, your conscience must have been eaten by a dog. Everyone naturally recognized the saint from Great Yong. Seeing her biting Feng Yuan's body in a frenzy, as if she wanted to tear Feng Yuan apart and eat him alive, how could they not know that it was Feng Yuan who had caused her to become like this? Otherwise, she wouldn't have pounced on her immediately after losing control. A woman like her could not even be described with the word venomous. She was clearly a demon among humans. Thinking this, everyone looked at Feng Yuan with even more disdain. At this moment, the wisp of green smoke in Feng Yuan's body sensed her danger and woke up. Chapter 1630. It instantly became angry and anxious. It did not have time to ask Feng Yuan what was going on. It raised its hand and blasted an attack at the saint puppet. Boom! The saint puppet was blasted back and instantly released its suppression of Feng Yuan. At this time, the Feng kite had already been gnawed into a mess by that saint puppet, and it was practically unrecognizable. The green smoke hurriedly got up and was about to escape. However, Luo Qingtong had been observing Feng Yuan with her blood-red eyes. Previously in the Saint King's tomb, she had noticed that something seemed to be wrong with Feng Yuan's body. She had been in danger several times and suddenly erupted with an extremely strange power that did not belong to her. Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed slightly. When Feng Yuan was knocked down, she did not close her blood-red eyes. Instead, she activated her pupil technique to the extreme. When the green smoke awakened and took control of Feng Yuan's body, she also discovered her traces. In an instant, the corners of Luo Qingtong's lips curled up. Saw her. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Looking at the faintly discernible green smoke in Feng Yuan's body, Luo Qingtong's expression was leisurely. The light in her blood-red eyes was unusually cold. How could she make the same mistake twice? Last time in the Saint King's tomb, Feng Yuan was lucky that the tomb collapsed and she escaped. This time, it would not be so easy. She would not let go of the green smoke in her body. Boom! As Luo Qingtong's voice sounded, her right hand suddenly blasted out an attack that had been brewing for a long time. Annihilation. Luo Qingtong had already grasped the heart of the thousand-year soul-guiding tree in her left hand, but it was hidden by her sleeve and was not visible. The attack in her right hand had been accumulating power for a long time, and now she blasted out with her sword. In an instant, the sword light that seemed to be able to annihilate everything spun like the Milky Way and blasted towards Feng Yuan in front of her like a waterfall. The latter's figure was about to disappear into the air under the control of the green smoke. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's attack arrived. Boom! 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 Luo Qingtong's improved annihilation instantly shattered the spatial fluctuations around Feng Yuan's body and pulled her body back. Not only that, it constantly eliminated the power around her so that she could no longer escape. At the same time, the power of the annihilation soared light. Annihilation. A miserable and sharp voice rang out. Feng Yuan's body was forcefully struck by the sword. In an instant, half of her body seemed to have melted into the air. The green smoke also let out an unusually shrill sound under Luo Qingtong's attack. But all of this could not compare to the shock and fear that appeared in his eyes the moment he saw Luo Qingtong's blood pupil. The sovereign blood pupil? It's actually the sovereign blood pupil? That person is back? He was shocked and frightened to the extreme. He almost could not believe his eyes. At this moment, boom! There was a sudden explosion outside the door of the venue. Then, an incomparably vigorous and angry voice suddenly shouted in a stern voice. Chapter 1631. Bang! As this voice rang out, in an instant, an incomparably violent sound wave shockwave spread all the way from the entrance of the venue, rushing into the venue in an instant. Luo Qingtong's attack was shaken by the sound wave and was deflected to one side. Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed. She was about to follow up with another attack when Feng Wuan's half-melted body suddenly disappeared in front of her. Luo Qingtong's face instantly turned cold. She turned her head with an icy gaze and looked at the figure who walked in from the entrance. To be precise, it was a group of figures. Luo Qingtong looked at the group of people behind that person. Those people were all injured and were supporting each other as they followed behind the person who strode into the venue. When they saw Luo Qingtong, they quickly pointed at her and said, "Martial Uncle Zhang, it's her. She injured us." "Yes. It's her. Senior Sister Yen is still unconscious," the group of people said. These people were none other than the people from the Breeze Pavilion. They had been instructed by Song Yen to stop Luo Qingtong and prevent her from entering the venue. However, they had been beaten up in the end. Now, they were here for revenge. So what if it's me? Luo Qingtong looked coldly at the group of people who had just interrupted her plan to kill Feng Wuan. Although the latter was on his last breath, Luo Qingtong could not be at ease until she saw him die in front of her. Thinking of how old Master Luo and Empress Dowager Yen she had almost been killed by Feng Wuan's conspiracy, Luo Qingtong felt stifled in her heart. She said coldly, "It's said that a good dog doesn't block the way. Don't you know how to be a dog? How dare you come in front of me and shout? Impudent." Hearing Luo Qingtong's words, Uncle Master Zhang's face was instantly filled with rage. The other party had injured the people of the Breeze Pavilion. It was fine if she did not immediately kneel and kowtow to apologize and beg for forgiveness. But she still dared to insult the people of the Breeze Pavilion? Who gave her the guts? She really did not know what was good for her. What an arrogant girl. You injured the people of the Breeze Pavilion. You don't repent and still dare to talk nonsense. I'll teach you a lesson today. I'll seek justice for the disciples of the Breeze Pavilion. Kneel down." As he spoke, he directly released his aura and pressed it toward Luo Qingtong. Holy General. Seeing the aura released by the other party, the people from Great Chu and Great Qin who had rushed to Luo Qingtong's side were all shocked. This was especially true for the Grand Supreme Dean and the others. Their expressions were even uglier. The other party's aura was thick and solid. He was clearly a top-notch Saint General and was not far from entering the Saint Lord realm. Why did such an expert come to the Breeze Pavilion? Normally, in the four academies' distinguished meeting, wouldn't the sects of the hidden worlds only send a single sacred expert, and that was already the limit? Most of the time, they would send a Saint Realm expert to deal with them. Why did a holy general appear here? In an instant, the Grand Supreme Dean's forehead was covered in sweat. Seeing that Martial Uncle Zhang's aura was about to press down on Luo Qingtong, he gritted his teeth and was about to speak. At this moment, a cold voice was heard coming from outside the door. "Kneel? You think you're worthy of making her kneel?" Chapter 1632. Swoosh. It was only a step away, but in a flash, the other party had already appeared in front of Luo Qingtong. Bang! Martial Uncle Zhang's suppressive aura towards Luo Qingtong was bounced back. In an instant, he took 2 steps back. "You!" He looked at the figure that suddenly appeared in front of him with a shocked and angry expression. As for the Supreme Dean and the others, they immediately cried out in surprise. Ming Zun. They looked at the figure that appeared beside Luo Qingtong in surprise. If they didn't see wrongly, Ming Zun had just repelled the Saint General of the Breeze Pavilion. Everyone was both shocked and pleasantly surprised. They were shocked that Yi Qianming was so strong. He was much stronger than they had imagined. They were surprised that the other party was so strong. Luo Qingtong should be fine. Everyone was very happy. The people who rushed over to Luo Qingtong's side were all from the Empire of Qin and the Great Chu. They naturally didn't want anything to happen to Luo Qingtong. Especially the Grand Principal. When he saw Yi Qianming appear, he immediately swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. With Yi Qianming here, there was no need for him to stand up. Hearing their voices, Martial Uncle Zhang's expression suddenly froze. "You are Ming Zun from the Black Field?" He was surprised and bewildered. The other party was actually someone from the secular world and not from the hidden world. Was there such a strong person in the secular world? He was in disbelief. The moment Yi Qianxian's voice sounded, Luo Qingtong dispersed the power in her hand and the eye technique that was about to control the saint-level puppet to rush over. Her eyes flashed slightly as she looked at the man in front of her. She didn't know why, but she felt inexplicably guilty. Although she didn't know what bad things she had done to this man. "Humph," Yi Qianxian snorted softly and ignored Luo Qingtong. This woman still knew how to feel guilty. He left for a while and when he came back, she ran away without a trace. If it weren't for the fact that Feng Wan came to the holy capital of Great Qi to participate in the Four Academies conference and that Luo Qingtong would never let him go, he didn't know where to go to catch her. He would remember this debt and settle it with her bit by bit later. Yi Qianxian's eyes swept past Luo Qingtong and finally landed coldly on Martial Uncle Zhang of the Breeze Pavilion. "You want her to kneel?" His voice was cold. No matter how angry he was, he couldn't bear to see her suffer any grievances. Yi Qianxian's eyes was cold. As for Martial Uncle Zhang, the moment he saw the light in Yi Qianren's eyes, he was shocked. The man's eyes were icy cold. With just one look, he felt like he was about to be frozen. Perhaps Yi Qianxian's strength was above his. As this Martial Uncle Zhang pondered, he immediately softened his tone. He looked at Yi Qianren and said, "She injured the people of our Breeze Pavilion and even spoke rudely to us. I just want to seek justice for the people of our Breeze Pavilion. Ming Zun, if you must protect her, that's fine too. Let her apologize to us, and I'll drop this matter immediately." As he spoke, the disciples of the Breeze Pavilion behind him immediately stood up with their heads held high and chests puffed out. "That's right. She injured us, so she must apologize." Chapter 1633. They actually wanted Luo Qingtong to kneel down and kowtow to them as an apology. However, they had also seen how Yi Qianxian had forced Uncle Master Zhang to retreat. Naturally, they could only accept this outcome. Even so, they were not prepared to let Luo Qingtong off so easily. After the other party had apologized, they would ruthlessly extort a sum of money from the other party. Wasn't this Luo Qingtong the evil Dr. Ghost Eye? The group of people had already figured out Luo Qingtong's identity from the discussions around them. Instantly, they became excited. After Luo Qingtong had apologized, they would make the other party take out a large sum of elixirs as an apology. In addition to treating their injuries, they would also need the other party's large sum of elixirs to increase their own strength. At that time, the other party would be so heartbroken that they would be unable to speak of their suffering. She had dared to attack them previously. It would be strange if they did not ruthlessly peel off a layer of her skin. The group of people were extremely pleased with themselves as they thought of this. They looked at Luo Qingtong and said, "Apologize, Luo Qingtong." "Apologize?" Luo Qingtong looked at them with a light smile. There was no trace of a smile in her eyes. "Are you going to apologize to me?" "Sure." She crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked at them with a cold smile on her lips. "I'll wait." "You." The group of people from the Breeze Pavilion glared at her. Uncle Master Zhang's expression was also extremely angry and cold. "You're impudent," he said coldly to Yi Qianxian. "Ming Zun, you've seen it too. She doesn't know how to appreciate kindness. It's not that I don't want to give you face. She injured our people from the Breeze Pavilion. This matter will not be settled just like this. Either she apologizes to us, or we fight back." There's no third option. I think that you, the dignified Ming Zun, won't protect her to the point where you can't differentiate right from wrong and be shameless and unreasonable? Before he could finish speaking, Luo Qingtong's cold voice rang out. Shameless and unreasonable? Are you talking about yourselves? Luo Qingtong sneered, her eyes sweeping over Martial Uncle Zhang and the group of people from the Breeze Pavilion behind him. Why did I hit you? Do you dare to tell me? The one who provokes first is despicable. You guys attacked me first and were beaten back by me. You still have the nerve to call me a thief? Where is your Breeze Pavilion's face? Did a dog eat it? Luo Qingtong's eyes were cold. She was originally filled with anger because the people from the Cool Breeze Pavilion had interrupted her attempt to kill Feng Yuan. If Feng Yuan didn't die and caused any more trouble, she would definitely hold the Cool Breeze Pavilion responsible for this. Not to mention that the other party was still relentlessly trying to deal with her. You want me to apologize? Good. She was going to properly compensate them. You. Nonsense. The people of the Breeze Pavilion felt guilty. They had tried to stop Luo Qingtong and were beaten up by her. They even caused Song Yan to be unconscious until now. They would never dare to tell the truth. What they said to Martial Uncle Zhang was also true. Luo Qingtong had previously been bullied by Song Yan and had always harbored a grudge. When she saw them, she immediately attacked them and beat them into this state. When they heard Luo Qingtong's words, they instantly felt guilty. However, they quickly calmed down. At that time, there was no one outside the venue. Other than a few passers-by, no one had seen them stop Luo Qingtong. So what if she told the truth? Chapter 1634. The crowd thought so and soon raised their heads proudly. They sneered at Luo Qingtong and said, Luo Qingtong, don't think that you can reverse right and wrong with your words. You were the one who hit us first. Don't talk nonsense here. Is that so? Luo Qingtong looked at them with a smile and suddenly raised her hand. Swoosh. A ray of light suddenly shot out from her finger and swept toward the disciple of the Breeze Pavilion who was shouting the loudest. You. Seeing Luo Qingtong's action, the disciples of the Breeze Pavilion didn't react at all. However, Martial Uncle Zhang's face was full of shock and anger. He raised his hand and was about to knock away the ray of light released by Luo Qingtong. However, just as he moved, Yi Qianxian's aura suddenly shook and shattered his attack with a bang. At the same time, the ray of light swept into the mouth of that disciple of the Breeze Pavilion. Oh! That disciple of the Breeze Pavilion didn't react to what had happened and inexplicably swallowed something in his mouth. He was caught off guard and swallowed it. His heart was instantly filled with panic. You! What did you make me eat? Martial Uncle Zhang was also very shocked and angry. He almost immediately attacked Luo Qingtong. However, Yi Qianxian's aura suddenly soared and enveloped Luo Qingtong. At the same time, a pair of sharp eyes that seemed to contain incomparable coldness coldly looked in his direction. The two of them were ready to attack. Luo Qingtong pulled Yi Qianxian and laughed softly. Don't worry, I didn't make them eat anything. I just made them eat something that made them speak the truth. As she spoke, she raised her hand and threw a pill to Martial Uncle Zhang. Truth pill. People who eat this pill can only speak the truth while the pill is in effect. You can check if there are any problems with this pill. Why should I believe your words? Martial Uncle Zhang's face was cold. He raised his hand and took the pill that Luo Qingtong threw to him. However, he had a bad premonition in his heart. Damn it, this girl can't be telling the truth, right? Could it be that these little bastards really lied to him? Martial Uncle Zhang's face was fierce. He fiercely turned around and glared at those disciples of the Breeze Pavilion, telling them to keep their mouths shut. He didn't care whether this matter was true or who started it first. But the Breeze Pavilion couldn't be in the wrong. He couldn't afford to lose face. As for this truth pill, he he could be considered an experienced and knowledgeable person in the hidden world, but he had never heard of such a medicinal pill. It seemed that the other party was just deceiving them. As long as these little bastards kept their mouths shut, the other party, they wouldn't be able to do anything. At that time, this stinky girl would have to suffer the consequences of her own actions. With that thought in mind, Martial Uncle Zhang retracted his aura. "All right, I'll believe you this time." As he spoke, he walked in front of that disciple of the Breeze Pavilion. The latter was desperately clawing at his throat, trying to spit out the truth pill. However, it was useless. That pill melted in his mouth. That disciple of the Breeze Pavilion was flustered. At this moment, Martial Uncle Zhang's voice rang out. "Speak, who among you made the first move?" He looked coldly at that disciple of the Breeze Pavilion. The warning in his eyes was very obvious. Although the latter was extremely flustered, he still pointed at Luo Qingtong and said, "It's her." Chapter 1635. Good. Martial Uncle Zhang sneered. He was very pleased with himself. Sure enough, the other party was just bluffing. "Did you hear that? Luo Qingtong. He said it was you. What else do you have to say?" He sneered at Luo Qingtong. The truth pill was provided by the other party, and she was the one who fed it into the mouth of the disciple. Now that the other party had said that she was the one who did it, let's see what other excuses she could have. The Breeze Pavilion's disciple was also pleasantly surprised. He was very nervous just now, afraid that the truth pill was real. If that was the case, he would be in trouble. He didn't expect that Luo Qingtong was bluffing. What truth pill? It could only tell the truth. What a joke. The Breeze Pavilion disciple was very pleased with himself. He was about to raise his head to look at Luo Qingtong. Suddenly, he realized that he couldn't control his body. Slap. Just as he was about to raise his head, he suddenly raised his right hand high and slapped himself with all his strength. Ah! That disciple of the Breeze Pavilion let out a blood-curdling scream. One must know that his full strength was no less than a full-strength blow from him. In any case, he was an expert who had surpassed the Saint realm. With this slap, his entire face was tilted to one side, and half of his face was swollen. Not only that, when he opened his mouth, several teeth flew out in an instant. What made him break down even more was that the words he used when he screamed were changed. Ah. I'm *TCH. I'm despicable. I'm shameless. I'm lying. As he screamed, he slapped his own mouth fiercely and shouted these words uncontrollably. In an instant, he burst into tears and almost fainted. It wasn't that he was weak, but that he used all his strength in every slap. He was about to be beaten to death, okay? Every time he opened his mouth, he would spit out several teeth. It was only a few slaps, but his teeth were almost knocked out. No one had expected his sudden change in attitude. In an instant, Martial Uncle Zhang's face darkened. What did you do to him? He glared at Luo Qingtong. The latter had a leisurely look on her face, as if she already knew that this would happen. I told you, the truth pill. Luo Qingtong looked at him indifferently. You can only tell the truth. If you lie, you'll be severely punished. That's right, Luo Qingtong looked at him with a smile and said, if he continues to refuse to tell the truth, he will be beaten to death. Before she could finish her sentence, the disciple of the Breeze Pavilion immediately cried out loudly. I'm telling the truth. I'm telling the truth. We started it. We started it. Stop. Stop it. That voice was exceptionally mournful and sharp. Strangely enough, after he said those words, he stopped slapping himself again and again. Martial Uncle Zhang's face was unsightly. I don't believe it. You must have used some sorcery. He shouted sternly at Luo Qingtong. What truth pill? It's just a smokescreen. Who knows what she did to my disciple in secret? Chapter 1636. Translations, You don't believe me? Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows and looked at him. Sure. As she spoke, she pointed at the Breeze Pavilion disciple and said, You can ask him any question and see how he responds. Before she could finish speaking, the Breeze Pavilion disciple wailed like a ghost and howled like a wolf. I can't. Martial uncle, I really can't take it anymore. As he spoke, he fainted. Seeing this, Martial Uncle Zhang's face instantly turned ashen. Trash. He viciously kicked the Breeze Pavilion disciple away and was about to call another Breeze Pavilion disciple over. Then, he felt that it was not safe. Who knew what the other party had done? That disciple had already been tricked, which meant that the other disciples could be tricked as well. As he thought of this, he immediately raised his hand and put the truth pill into his mouth. He did not believe that the other party could still do anything to him. Seeing his actions, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly flashed, and then she laughed. Some people just like to think that they were smart. She liked such people who thought that they were smart. She crossed her arms and looked at Martial Uncle Zhang. The latter had already called out another disciple of the Breeze Pavilion and had him ask him a question. The kind that only we know when you ask. He said coldly. That disciple quickly nodded and then asked, Martial Uncle, what is my name? This was indeed a question that only they knew. Martial Uncle Zhang nodded with a satisfied expression. Then, he purposely gave the wrong answer and said, Chen Tong. As soon as he finished speaking, he calmed himself down and waited for the abnormal movements in his body. No matter what the other party wanted to do to him, he would fiercely suppress it and then teach the other party a lesson. At that time, he would see what the other party had to say. As he thought of this, he suddenly looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong with a cold expression. At this moment, he suddenly felt that his body was out of control. It's coming. Martial Uncle Zhang thought of this and immediately tried to suppress this strange movement in his body. However, this strange movement seemed to be a part of his body. No matter how much willpower he exerted, he could not suppress this power. It was as if he was shouting, Fight! He wanted to beat the liar to death. Just like the disciple from the Breeze Pavilion, this Uncle Master Zhang raised his right hand and slapped himself hard. Before he could react, another slap landed on his face. In the blink of an eye, Martial Uncle Zhang's face was slapped to the left, then to the right. His entire face had been slapped out of shape. Because it was his own power, his body's defense was useless. The power of a peak Saint General instantly whipped him until he was hovering between life and death. As soon as he opened his mouth, he let out a blood-curdling scream. I'm trash, I'm lowly, I deserve to die, I shouldn't have lied. He howled as he slapped himself in the face. Every slap was ruthless, and he couldn't control himself at all. At this moment, this Uncle Master Zhang finally understood why the Breeze Pavilion disciple fainted when he heard that he was going to be asked another question. This feeling was really worse than death. That truth pill was actually real. Chen Peng. It's Chen Peng. Chapter 1637. He tried his best to control himself, but to no avail. Instead, the more he slapped himself, the more vicious he became. This martial Uncle Zhang couldn't take it anymore. He called out the disciple's name loudly and finally stopped before he knocked himself out. At this moment, his face was completely swollen like a pig's head. His teeth were all over the floor. Other than the one who had completely fainted, the other disciples of the Breeze Pavilion all looked at him in shock. Luo Qingtong's expression was indifferent. How is it? Is the truth out now? Was it your Breeze Pavilion who made the first move, or was it me who made the first move? Senior, you have to think carefully before you answer. Luo Qingtong's face was full of smiles. She was clearly as beautiful as a flower, but in the eyes of martial Uncle Zhang, she was as scary as a ghost. He fiercely twitched his cheek. Every time he twitched, he felt an unforgettable pain, reminding him that everything just now was not a dream. He had almost slapped himself to death. "It's you." He gritted his teeth and wanted to make a final struggle. But before he could finish speaking, he felt his body becoming restless. His face instantly turned pale, and he no longer had any thoughts of bluffing his way out. "It's us. It's our breeze pavilion," he hurriedly said. Only after he said this did he feel the restlessness in his body disappear. He put down his hand that was about to raise again, and his expression instantly turned ugly. This breeze pavilion Saint General expert had never been so humiliated before. He fiercely glared at the trembling breeze pavilion disciples who didn't even dare to look at him. He stood up, panting heavily. "Let's go." He shook off the breeze pavilion disciples who came to help him and turned to leave. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's voice slowly sounded from behind him. "Senior, you're leaving just like that? I'm afraid that's not good." Luo Qingtong walked in front of him with her arms crossed. She smiled faintly and said, "Just now, your breeze pavilion people said that I hit you, so I have to apologize, right? Now that you've clearly wronged me, why are you leaving just like that?" Luo Qingtong sneered as she looked at these people from the breeze pavilion. These people probably didn't know what it meant by, "It's easier to invite the devil in than to send it away." Why was it so easy for them to find trouble with him? "You want to leave?" "Sure. Apologize and make amends before leaving." She would never stop him. Luo Qingtong generally didn't find trouble with others, but whoever found trouble with her had to be prepared to be skinned alive. She didn't know what it meant to be forgiving whenever possible. She only knew that if Yi Qianxian hadn't arrived, who knew what these people from the breeze pavilion would have done? Since that was the case, why would she let them go? Wasn't it just taking advantage of power to bully others? She knew how to do it too. Those who bullied her would be returned 100-fold. "You don't go too far." Being stopped by Luo Qingtong, Martial Uncle Zhang instantly trembled with anger. This woman was simply outrageous. He and the disciples from the breeze pavilion had already become like this, and she actually wanted them to apologize. However, he had completely forgotten that they only had themselves to blame. Chapter 1638. This martial Uncle Zhang coldly glared at Luo Qingtong, his heart filled with resentment. Before he came to find trouble with Luo Qingtong, he never thought that he would kick an iron plate. In his opinion, the other party was only a small student of the Holy Institute. Even if he later found out that the other party was evil Dr. Ghost Eye, he still didn't put him in his eyes. He was only slightly famous. It wasn't as if their hidden world didn't have alchemists. However, the appearance of Yi Qianxian was completely beyond his expectations. He never thought that in this secular world, there would be such a powerhouse. With the other party's strength, he should have been able to enter the hidden world. How could he stay in this secular world, unknown to the public? If it weren't for this, he wouldn't have been put in such a difficult situation. He also wouldn't have allowed this girl called Luo Qingtong to be so arrogant in front of him. This martial Uncle Zhang suppressed the anger in his heart again and again. He coldly looked at Yi Qianxian and said, "Dark Revered, do you really want to connive with her to deal with our breeze pavilion? I'm afraid you don't know, but our breeze pavilion is a 6th-class sect in the hidden world. There's a saying, leave a way out for everything, and we'll meet again in the future. Dark Revered, I think that your black field doesn't want to provoke any serious trouble because of this, right?" His eyes were arrogant, and his words contained a hidden threat. Obviously, he was prepared to use the power of the breeze pavilion to suppress Yi Qianxian. Hearing this, Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others who had followed behind Yi Qianxian felt their lips twitch. This other party was threatening their master? Breeze Pavilion, a 6th-class sect? They were really fierce. However, their master didn't even place the entire hidden world in his eyes. If it wasn't for the fact that he found it troublesome and didn't want to be seen through by the people of the hidden world Star Dream Branch Hall and cause unnecessary trouble for himself, then Master wouldn't have stayed in the secular world of True Spill Continent. Now, this was the reason for the other party to threaten their master? Everyone looked at him as if he was an idiot. When Martial Uncle Zhang saw this, he thought that Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others were stunned by his words. He immediately snorted proudly and waved his sleeves at the people of the Breeze Pavilion. Let's go. Let's see who dares. Before the word block could leave his mouth, he instantly fell to his knees with a bang. His legs sank deeply into the ground. Because he had used too much strength, the bones in his legs were broken. In an instant, Martial Uncle Zhang let out a miserable shriek. Yi Qinxian's cold voice rang out along with his voice. Make them crawl out on their knees. You guys stay here and guard them. His words were naturally directed at Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others. The latter and the others hurriedly responded. Yi Qinxian's eyes swept over the shocked and incredulous people of the Breeze Pavilion. He raised his hand and pulled Luo Qingtong into his arms. Then, with a flash, he disappeared with the young girl. He had allowed the other party to dawdle with Luo Qingtong for so long because he didn't want this woman to hold back too much anger and grievances. Now that the matter had been resolved, it was time for him to settle the accounts between them. Bang! Luo Qingtong and Yi Qinxian's figures appeared in a room. Luo Qingtong was thrown onto the large bed in the room by Yi Qinxian. Then, the man's slender figure pressed down on her. Boy toy, huh? You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.